clock.
Let's roll.
I'd like to call the June 7, 2011 meeting of the Buncombe County Board of Commission to order. And as always, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, if you'll join me. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I'd like to call on Commissioner Peterson to give us our invocation tonight.
Thank you, Chairman. May we pray. Our dear Heavenly Father, we come today with grateful hearts that we are privileged to live in this most beautiful part of the world, Buncombe County. We pray that you will bestow your richest blessings on the citizens of our county, state, and nation. This is a special week for our family and many families in Buncombe County. High school graduations are scheduled. This meaningful event for our young citizens is the culmination of the efforts of many people, loving families and friends, supportive communities and churches, and the hardworking, dedicated teachers, coaches, principals, and staff who devote their professional lives to educate our most valuable resource, our children. Today we ask that you hold Hannah and the 1,600 seniors who will graduate from Buncombe County High Schools, the 300 seniors who will graduate from Asheville High School, and all the private and homeschooled seniors in the palm of your hand as they step with great anticipation and promise into your world. All these things we ask in your most blessed name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. In accordance with our board's code of ethics, it's the duty of every member to avoid both actual and apparent appearances of conflict. Does any board member know of any actual or potential conflict of interest that might be arise from any matter coming before our board today?
None.
No, sir.
Then is there a motion to follow the consent agenda with the change that we will be taking up the radio resolution before the budget matters, and also we'll be taking up that will designate a NACO voting member? Is there a motion to adopt the budget with, not yet, the agenda along those lines?
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion by Commissioner Peterson, a second by Vice Chair Stanley. Is there any discussion of following the agenda with those amendments? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The agenda will be followed as modified by a 5-0 vote. Next up, we have proclamations. I'd like to recognize Vice Chair Stanley to read our proclamation on Vulnerable Adults and Elder Abuse Awareness Month. And is Jennifer Childen here? Anybody from the social work program? Okay, well, Commissioner Stanley will read it, and we'll get it to him.
Folks, before I read this, unfortunately, our community lost a great citizen in the last few weeks. He was certainly an advocate for senior citizens. Mr. Joe Connolly was long time advocate for him, and was just a super asset to our elderly community. And I would ask for just a moment of silence in Joe Connolly's name. Thank you. Amen. Thank you. Proclamation of Vulnerable Adults and Elder Abuse Awareness Month. Whereas Buncombe County's vulnerable and elderly adults deserve to live safely with dignity, and whereas vulnerable and elderly adults of all socioeconomic, racial, ethnic backgrounds may be targets of abuse, neglect, or exploitation, which occurs in families, long-term care facilities, and communities. And whereas abuse of our vulnerable and elder adults is most often defined as any act that harms or threatens their health, welfare, or financial situation. And whereas in 2010, more than 18,000 reports of abuse, neglect, or exploitation of vulnerable and elder adults were made to North Carolina's 100 county departments of social services. And whereas protecting Buncombe County's vulnerable and elder adults is a community responsibility, and it is imperative that communities work together to help reduce and prevent abuse, neglect, and exploitation. And whereas in 2030, 1 in 4 North Carolinians will be over the age of 60. And whereas all citizens should watch for signs of abuse, neglect, and exploitation of vulnerable and elder adults and report it to their local Department of Social Studies. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of Commissioners for the County of Buncombe as follows: that this board does hereby proclaim May the 6th to June the 20th, 2011 as Vulnerable Adults and Elder Abuse Awareness Month in Buncombe County. This board does hereby encourage all citizens to participate in community efforts to support and improve the safety and well-being of vulnerable and elder adults and secure their right to live free of abuse, neglect, and exploitation. That this proclamation be effective upon its adoption. Mr. Chairman, I move the adoption of the proclamation.
Second.
It's been a motion by Vice Chair Stanley, a second by Commissioner Peterson. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, no. We will adopt that, and maybe we give that to Mandy. Someone from DSS will make sure we get that to the right people. Thank you. Thank you, Vice Chair. Next up, we have Debbie Trumpy with rezoning request. This is EAL Holdings R2 to EMP. You can explain what that all means in the lay language for everybody.
Yes, sir. Ann Winter is representing EAL Holdings, has applied to rezone a portion of tax lot 9653079862, located at 495 Watson Road, from R2 Residential District to the EMP Employment District. The property is located on Watson Road near the intersection with Airport Road and is approximately 0.72 acres. There is an existing industrial building that's split between EMP and R2 zoning. That parcel is in limestone zoning, which was enacted in the early 80s. At that time, it was two separate parcels. One was zoned EMP, and I think simply because we lacked the technology that we have today, it was not realized that the building crossed that property line, and in the southern portion was zoned R2. But the southern part is what they're asking to zone to the EMP, which the adjoining part is. The surrounding area is commercial, industrial, with office uses and also some single and multifamily residential uses. The requested zoning would be consistent with the Buncombe County Comprehensive Land Use Plan, as the Land Use Plan update indicates that the EMP district is primarily intended to provide appropriately located sites for employment concentrations, primarily for office-type uses, industrial storage, warehousing, and wholesale trade. The zoning would be consistent with the surrounding uses and would bring a non-conforming structure into compliance, and staff recommends approval of the request. The Planning Board held a public hearing on this application on May 16th this year. There was no public comment, and the Planning Board found that the rezoning is consistent with the Land Use Plan, is adjacent to EMP zoning, and within a mix of office, industrial, and commercial uses, and the Planning Board unanimously recommended approval of the rezoning.
All righty. Are there any questions for Ms. Trumpy before we have a public hearing? All right. We'll call the public hearing to order, 4:42. Any public comment on this? .443, public hearing ends. Is there a motion?
Approval.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Bailey, second by Commissioner Peterson. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of the recommended zoning change, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The zoning change is adopted, R2 EMP 5-0. Next, we have Debbie Trumpy is going to tell us about several ordinances amending our fee schedules. If you could just take them one by one.
These amendments to the ordinances are not actually amending the fee schedules. The four ordinances, adult establishments, erosion control, erosion and sedimentation control, manufactured home parks, and telecommunication towers ordinances, all four of those have the actual fee within the text of the ordinance. And the amendments that we are looking for is on all four of those, just to strike the specific fee within those ordinances and substitute a sentence saying that the Board of Commissioners shall establish fees and may amend and update the fees when needed. And we're asking that as these fees are designed to cover staff costs for reviews and inspections, vehicle costs, gas mileage, all those costs change through time, and in order for us to be able to amend those fees down the road, it would be more appropriate to have that through the budget process rather than within the ordinance and then going back and amending the ordinance each time.
Mm-hmm.
The only other thing besides that is that within the telecommunications ordinance, there's a change to the definition of the ordinance administrator. Right now, it says it is the employee appointed by the Board of Commissioners, and we would like to change that as well to mean the planning director or his designee. But there is no specific fee being set here. It's just allowing that those fees can change through time without amending the ordinances themselves.
Is there a plan to raise the fees here?
We are proposing that some fees be raised in this budget session, yes.
So basically, you're just wanting the authority to do it without having to come back here every time?
Exactly.
And is this comparable to other communities in the area, what they charge for these?
We did, in a fee schedule that we are proposing, we did look at several communities and see what they charged, and we were quite often charging less than that, particularly in the ordinances where the fee is set. We have some that they were adopted back in the early and mid-'90s, and the fees have never changed.
All right.
So if a member of the public wanted to review that fee schedule that's proposed within the budget, where would they find it online to?
I don't know that it's posted online. They can certainly contact the planning department, and we'd be happy to share that with them.
Do we know the fee schedule now? The proposed fee schedule? We should post it. We should have it so we don't want the first notice to be when they get a permit what it is. We need to have it so people can see it. I agree with Commissioner Jones. That's been our policy. So is there a place we can put this so anybody that wants to go online can see what it is right now?
Sure. We can get with the clerk in the morning and we can post that. There's no problem.
Okay. Is that the sense of the commission? I think people have a right to know. All right. People also have a right to a public hearing. Any other questions for Debbie? Okay. Let's, I think we got 4 separate public
Better do them
hearings.
one
Is
at
that
a
right?
time, maybe.
Mr. Chairman, I think it would be appropriate, if you wish, just to have the one public hearing for all 4, since it's basically the same change in each one of those ordinances, but we would ask that you
Oh,
have a
it's the
separate
same
vote
change in
on
each one.
each
I
one.
read. Okay, all right.
Okay. Is that,
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I think public comment grouping the 4 together as long as we have 4 votes on each of the
okay.
changes.
Okay. All right. Very good. Any other questions for Ms. Trumpy about what we're doing here and why we're doing it? All right, then we'll start the public hearings. And we're going to combine them all together. We will be having 4 separate votes at the end of the public hearings, 4 against these, and we'll take public hearing on anyone that wants to talk about the ordinance amending the adult establishment fee schedule, soil erosion and sedimentation control fees, manufactured home and trailer ordinance fees, and telecommunication ordinance fees. So if anyone would like to comment on those, I will open the public comment at 4:48. 3 minutes, name and address, where you live. Mr. Yelton?
Can we give 3 minutes on each one?
Now, let's just do 3 minutes on all of them.
Because bottom line is, when I saw this on the agenda, I got totally upset because what you're doing is taking away the public's input on the fee schedule. You just heard Ms. Trumpy say you got ordinances that was passed in the 90s. So this is just the beginning of a process that you guys are going to move to put the fees to where you can go up on the fees anytime you want to and never get public input. You don't even know if it's going to be posted on the board. You don't even know what your current fees are. Now let's look at these individually. For mobile home park, North Carolina has 15% of its housing in mobile home parks. The national average is 7%. We know we've got a problem with affordable housing, so what are we going to do? We're going to go up on the fee. That means it's going to be harder to have a mobile home park. How many of you use cell phones? I think you all get an electronic allowance from the county to pay for your cell phone. You're going to double the fee from $2,500 to $5,000. I've already got news of that. So, folks, where does that $5,000 get passed on to? Everybody in here that uses a cell phone, which includes our sheriff's department. So, frankly, I think this is a move to make our government operate behind closed doors at the discretion and the will of whatever's necessary. You've already offered in your comments from your staff the proof that you're going to go up on the rest of your fees. So you're going to do them the same way you did this. I think this is an atrocity. I think this is taking government away from the people. This is totally anti-democratic. And basically, I have seen a lot of elected officials lately say, well, we run the show. If people don't like us, they can throw us out of office. Well, David, keep on doing this. This is wonderful. This is great, because every time you do things like this, the people are beginning to wake up and see exactly what's going on. You know, David, you and I have argued about a lot of things. There's nothing wrong with having a good debate in public. And I think those fees should be public matter, should be voted on by the county commissioners, should be published in the paper, should be addressed so that the builders and the mobile home operators and the trailer park operators could have some input to it, as well as the cell tower people.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Yelp. Any other public comment on any of these 4 ordinances? Yes, sir.
My name's Tom Christ. I live in Asheville, and I'm here with the Manufactured Housing Association. I'd like to comment specifically about mobile homes. We put a lot of pressure in Buncombe County on affordable housing. It's very difficult from a cost-effective standpoint to put new trailer parks in Buncombe County. It's almost impossible. We don't want to put any more pressure on the many people who need affordable housing, want to live in parks. $150 or a $200 raise in a charge to someone trying to put a house in a park is a lot of money. It's not really going to help that much in the shortfall in budgets and fees. I realize that there's certainly a need to have more fees. But as far as manufactured housing is concerned, these folks are just looking for affordable housing. There isn't much out there. There really isn't anything else that they can look to. And one of the things that I would also like to see is I'd like to have more of an opportunity to have manufactured housing in Buncombe County. And as we've talked about many times, I'd like to see us rezone R1 and R2 so double wides are going to be allowed in the county again. It might give you some more fees that way. But this is something that we've talked about for a long time. And I think we should afford more opportunity for people to have manufactured housing, especially in parks and in R1 and R2 where they're now banned. One of the things that we are seeing, and this is an unintended consequence of our zoning ordinance, we have zoned out double wides in R1 and R2, and you're seeing lots for double wides in the rest of the county in open use sell at higher prices because there's a premium on them, and it further makes it difficult to get affordable housing. I've got a couple of people right now who are first responders in Buncombe County who need to live in their area, and they cannot buy a house. If R1 and R2 afforded that to them, they would be able to live and work in their area, and we're getting to the point where they can no longer do that. So this is something that's really critical, raising the fees to people who are needy and need housing, and also preventing people from buying housing in the first place in certain areas is something that we really need to take a look at and amend. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Any other comments tonight? Yes, sir. Mike?
Commissioners, Mike Fairview. Looking at this, they are asking for an open end. We don't know what the charges are now, and I would say all of y'all sitting there don't either. Everybody needs to see what the charges are and figure percentage if you're going to do something. Times are tight. You know, we have to buckle down like everybody else does. You have to buckle down too. But to raise money to go up on fees on people that have already had buckled down, that's not responsible county or city or anything. Anytime fees are incurred, you got 4 items up here: soil, mobile homes. Mobile homes, I think your zoning actually cost about $15,000 more to bring a mobile home in because of your zoning. Then you're wanting to add more fees to that, and that does not help affordable housing. Simple fact is, it's time for all of us to stop. We have no money. And you don't have to go after the little people to get the money. That's what you're doing if you pass that. It's the little people that you're going to go after. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fryer. Any other public comment tonight? Mr. Rice?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. These are great comments. I think you ought to postpone this voting today and give an opportunity to be a public hearing on each of these items and give sufficient notice to the different people that might be out there, and not just a blurb in the paper in the Citizen Times that nobody can find. I think it ought to be well publicized. One of the things that concerns me is this is a tax increase on the poor. This is not a property tax increase per se, but it is affecting the people that's buying homes and the things that the folks have said on the manufacturing homes. Not only is it affecting a tax increase, you're also affecting the school districts in a heavy way here by not allowing affordable housing in certain areas, and you're pushing districts in the school to be bigger in certain areas because it's not a level playing field. So like the gentleman said about the R1 mobile homes, we need to open this thing up for a discussion and find out just what a big impact this is having on our schools. Because I think with all these different items together, this is a great tax increase on a segment of people, not all people, but a segment of people. So I think it's pretty discriminatory to put this out this way without having a fair hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Any other public comment tonight on any of these 4 proposals? Yes, sir, Dr. Rice.
Dr. Milton Bird, Buncombe County resident. Because you're looking to address fee schedules through this public hearing approach, there is a sense of trust that people have on this kind of decision-making process. There is a great efficiency trying to condense down and streamline, and I understand the value of effective, let me restate that, efficient bureaucracy, but there's a point of efficiency that undermines the effectiveness of the trust with the people on such kinds of communications when you're making these kind of cost issues that will be passed on to the people. there is a really strong need right now in our elected leadership to begin rebuilding open forum communication with the public, to begin rebuilding a ground level of trust with local officials. I've sat here and watched you as well talk about the state and how difficult it is to trust when there's things going on that are decisions being made for the county without your input. You understand that feeling. The people have that same feeling. Right now, there is a huge opportunity for this board to reopen the ability to communicate with the people. Public forums right now are the critical backbone of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Byrd. Any other public comment tonight? Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Hi, I'm Reverend Lisa Landis, and I was wondering, looking on there and seeing, the mobile housing and the adult entertainment, and it's like, are you going down? How are you picking which things to raise the fees on? And back in one of my many professions, I used to design clothing for girls who worked at the strip bars and the men's clubs. And I feel that we have perverted our human bodies. And it's like, is that really fair? These girls work for a living just like you work for a living. And their source of entertainment is degraded, and I have to wonder why. Why, how did you get to pick, adult entertainment as to, well, let's raise the fees on this. Way back when I was designing, these girls were doing a car wash to raise money for a domestic violence shelter. And do you know that the domestic violence shelter refused to take the money that they raised? So it's like, I think that we are very perverted in our thoughts and in our actions and in our deeds. And I hope that we can come to some kind of an understanding and start to change the way that we look at other people. Instead of less than, we should start to look at where we are like. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Landis. Any other comment?
Could I make a recommendation?
Yes, ma'am.
While tonight we're asking you to take some language out of these ordinances, we're happy to put the new fee schedule on the agenda with the budget at our next meeting so everyone can see exactly what we're talking about, existing fees, proposed fees, and how they compare to others. And that way there is an opportunity for everyone to see what those fees would be before they are adopted. We're not asking you to adopt fees tonight, but so that we separate these properly, we're just asking for a language change tonight, and we will put those fees on the agenda for the next meeting.
All right. So, any other public comment tonight? If not, I will end the public comment at 5:04.
Chairman, I think that's a great approach, and I think that's the good way to go. And I would offer an amendment to the language that is repeated in the four ordinances proposed that would at the end say, County Board of Commissioners shall establish license fees and may amend and update these fees annually during the budget process. So that it's a little bit more, we're going to look at these one time a year, this is the time of year we're going to do it. We may, or that's when we do it if we decide to do it, as opposed to kind of the unsure time. So that would be my suggestion for an amendment.
I second that with the amendment.
Okay, there's been a motion by Commissioner Jones, a second by Commissioner Bailey to approve the four ordinances with an amendment that the fee schedule is part of the budget annually and made available to the public for review and consideration annually during the budget process. Is that it? Yeah, Okay, any discussion?
And we are accepting the situation that the planning director will be the ordinance administrator.
Yes, that in
That's
addition.
part of, okay.
You know, I think right now, the general public is paying for all our inspection fees and all the energy and staff time we have to spend to do these permits. Is that right? Is that, I guess, is that right?
There are some services we provide that have no charge. There's other services which have fees that we're proposing we would change. And yes, if those fees are not covering the costs of time and vehicle use and gas, then the general public is subsidizing that.
Well, that's the way I kind of read it. I don't think that someone that does not use these items should be paying for it. And you're trying to put the cost on the people that are using them and that are asking for the permits and benefiting from the permit.
Exactly.
Okay.
Good point.
So, you know, this is, someone's going to pay for this, but right now the general public is paying, and your proposal is basically to break it down so the people that are doing this actually have to pay. There's nobody on this board that is against affordable housing. This board bends over backwards and will continue to always bend over backward for affordable housing.
Well, I'd
So
like to.
That's a wild accusation. Yes, ma'am. Go
I
ahead.
did want to clarify that. It seemed like the perception that this was individuals placing mobile homes that this ordinance change was for, and this is for establishing a mobile home park. And the proposed change is from $100 to $150 when you're developing a mobile home park that's less than 20 spaces, and from $200 to $250 developing one that's 20 or more. So this is not individuals putting their homes into those parks, but the developer himself reviewing those plans and going out and do the inspections.
Okay, because I know beyond any doubt, there's not a person sitting up here that's going to do anything to get in the way of affordable housing. And I think repeatedly this board has voted to do so. And we're never, to fight that, and we're never going to. But, so we're talking about $50 for a park of 20 people or more. Okay.
Yes.
And I guess technically that is passed along, but we're talking $50. Okay. Okay. Any other discussion or any other comments?
I move adoption of the motion.
Okay, we've got a motion already, and you move the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Then all the ordinances with the amendments are adopted. Thank you.
I do think, Mr. Chairman, just to make it clean, because we did have 4 different ordinances,
you're
so
right.
we could do
You're
it
right.
each time. So I think
Thank
that's
you,
just
you
to
told me that.
amend all 4 just now.
Let's, okay, so let's do them one by one. Vote. Agreed. The vote on the adult establishment fee schedule ordinance change. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. 5-0. Soil erosion sedimentation control fee amendment ordinance. Ordinance amendment. All those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That motion carries 5-0. Manufactured homes and trailer ordinance fee amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries 5-0. And finally, the ordinance amending the telecommunication ordinance fee. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The motion carries 5-0. Okay, thank you. Next, we have Brian Dillingham, who's going to talk to us about a resolution authorizing the acceptance of a complete P25 compliant 700 megahertz trunked simulcast radio system provided in Buncombe County at no cost from Cassidian Communication, Inc. You'll have to straighten that out for us, but this is a resolution authorizing the county manager to enter into a 10-year maintenance and service agreement with Cassidian Communications for maintaining the new radio system upgrade. Brian Dillingham.
Thank you. I'm going to start by just giving an update of where we are on our current radio system, and then Kim Pruitt will take over and talk about the offer itself, and Sheriff Duncan and Mr. Vihan may have a few comments as well. So currently, over the past 2 years, we've been working with the Sheriff's Department, EMS, and county fire departments to ensure that we meet something called the FCC narrowbanding deadline that occurs January 1st of 2013. This deadline is for all mobile radio system operators in the United States. And essentially what it means is when you broadcast over the air, your signal is so wide. And to meet the mandate, you have to cut it in half. The reason for that is to create more frequencies and channels for others in the United States to use. Currently, we're in the UHF, VHF spectrum, which is very crowded, and that's why the FCC has done this. The DTV transition did some of that for some of the higher bands, and Kim will talk about that. But essentially, we have to shrink that bandwidth down by replacing some equipment that we currently have to keep those services functional for the next few years. By narrowbanding, we do come across some problems. We already faced with some coverage issues with our system. By narrowbanding, we also reduce our effective coverage. The only way to overcome these problems is with the addition of radio sites, and we were here a few weeks ago about the telecommunications tower ordinance. Our coverage is pretty limited today, especially when officers carry handheld radios. We're only covering about 53% of the county today. After we narrowband, if we stay on the current sites and don't expand, we expect that to drop down to about 48%. So you can see why we're having to continue to expand the system and make it more functional for everyone. One of the unfortunate side effects, however, is going to be the addition of interference. As we build more sites and put up more receivers to receive these signals, we're going to be hearing more signals from outside of the county, which is a problem today. And that's only going to increase as we stay with the VHF technology that's in use. And it's another thing that will be addressed in the proposal we're getting ready to talk about. I'm sorry, but anyway, we'll increase the capacity for others around us by narrowbanding, but it will only cause us more interference is the short of the issue. So I'm going to hand it over to Kim, and she's going to talk about the proposal, the 700 megahertz proposal.
And the way that led in, he's taller than me. Brian is working very closely with the planning department and with the facilities department to try to get many sites put in place to allow us to meet this narrowband update. While we have been working to get those sites established so we can meet that mandate, we have been approached by EADS, Cassidian. They are a public safety and defense company specializing in communications networks and aviation products. They are wanting to get a U.S. presence in public safety radio. They are the second largest company that produces public safety radio, but they are wanting to have a showcase site. So they have been doing some research on Buncombe County, and they would like to place a showcase site in Buncombe County and put the equipment here, basically free of charge to us for the actual network infrastructure that would host this radio system. The system that is being recommended to us is a 700 megahertz radio system. 700 megahertz is a new, clean, clear frequency. It has just been dedicated to public safety. It was taken from some TV channels that were cleared not too long ago to create a new radio frequency. So there are already allocated channels of 700 for North Carolina. So in coming to us, basically we're like, and what does that mean from us? So they want a nice area to bring potential clients. We can certainly do that. You can look around us, and that one's not too hard to do. They were looking for a strong technology department. They were looking for someone who we could manage this system. Radio systems have become technology systems. They're as much software as they are hardware. It's much change in the last 20 years around radio systems. They also looked at us because about a year ago we were very forward thinking in replacing our dispatch console system, and we went with an IP-based dispatch system, which made this very attractive. It'll allow us to talk to any radio system. So while they enjoy the beauty of our area, they also see it as a challenging terrain. If they can make radio communication work in this area, then they feel like they could probably make it work just about anywhere. So that's another reason they wanted to come to us. In return, Buncombe County is being asked to do some things. Of course, the technology department would have to manage it. We do have to have sites. They are recommending to get the coverage that we would desire from this P25-700 system. We would need 12 sites. Since we were going to be going to like 11 sites for the narrow band anyway, that's not a huge thing to ask us to do. We just have to do a little more with the site work. They've also asked that we would partner with them on a maintenance plan. The maintenance plan that they have put before us is very comparable to what we do on any of our large systems. Actually, it's much less. It comes to 6%. It's a 6% rate. We typically are paying between 12 and 18% on hardware and software contracts, but we would sign this maintenance agreement to assure that we can maintain this system over the 10 years. We do believe that this system will provide probably a 94% population coverage of the radio system. If you look specifically at land mass, it's probably about 85 to 87%, but much greater than what we have now in the UHF VHF system. With this partnership, we believe we can enhance public safety because we're going with a new clear communication signal. We also believe that this is a good partnership because we know that we'll have a good standing radio system for the next 10 years and will assist us in capital planning. And we believe that all of our users, whether it's county fire, EMS, or sheriff, they will have some decisions they can make on their own around the portables or handhelds. And those are items that we would go out on competitive procurement. Since they're P25 standard, we probably can get much better pricing on those by making it be a separate from getting the actual network communication. So this is pretty much what we are presenting, but it's probably not up to the IT department. It's probably up to these two gentlemen if this is the direction we should be going. Y'all want to speak for a moment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners.
Mayor.
I think this is an opportunity for the amount of money that's involved in a system like this. I don't see how we can turn it down. As you know from previous conversations where they are narrow banding, it's going to eliminate our coverage. And we were in the process of, and we're still going to do it, add the other towers to do both systems on. But this is a huge piece of what it would cost to go ahead to the 700 megahertz system. And it's the federal government's goal is to have every emergency service at some point in time in the future in this 700 megahertz frequency realm. So it's a good way for us to get started on it. It is an expensive system, but what they're offering us sure takes care of a lot of the backbone of such a system. And I would encourage you go ahead and authorize acceptance of this system, and then we can proceed to add to the system and eventually get every agency, even the city of Asheville at some point in time, will be able to be on this same system with us if they so desire. Any questions from Bill?
Mayor, they're offering us a little over $6 million worth of equipment. Is that what it is?
That's correct.
Free.
Free.
As long as they just want to come here and try it out and
try
see
it
if they
out
make it work in our
let
mountains.
their customer. And Cassidian is one really large company. I know you haven't heard of it like maybe GE or Motorola or something like that, but they've been in Europe for years. They do a lot of stuff for the military, and they know what they're doing.
Hard to turn down $6 million.
Where do they have sites in the United States? I know
They have, where was that one?
They have a site. They're building a site in Richardson, Texas, right now. They have a site, in California, and they recently did a site for the Royal Canadian Mounted Police for the G8 G20 summit. That was a 20 or 28 site system that they used for that summit. They also have systems. They have a nationwide system across New Zealand, and they're just all over Europe. I think they have about 200 total systems installed.
So it's a proven entity.
The proven
Yes,
thing,
ma'am.
yeah.
Thank you.
It's really going to be a benefit. All the eventually fire departments, other law enforcement agencies will be able to join with the county, and I'm going to let Van address the law enforcement aspect.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Thank you.
This is truly an opportunity meeting up with a need. We have seen a constant degrading of the radio system just by the nature of the way they work over the past several years. And what we've begun to see now in communications is several times through a 12-hour shift, we're having dispatchers who will have to pick up the phone and call an officer in a residence to be able to check on their status to make sure that they're okay. And IT, Brian, Clint Gorman, they've been working very diligently on this VHF system, but it's just a system with a simulcast that is beginning to lose its ability to be effective and really safe for us to use and operate on. We know with this narrowband coming, and I'm probably a great person to explain it because I know very little about radio except that they've worked very hard on Channel 3, which is an alternative channel that we use. It has already been narrowbanded, and the coverage on it is significantly less, even with the new equipment, than Channel 1, than Sheriff's Channel 1, where we've been having a lot of problems. So that being a viable solution, staying on the VHF channel and just trying to upgrade and fix it is probably not going to work, and us be able to keep our officers safe and be able to check on them in a majority of the portions of the county where they're out delivering services. But any questions from that end?
So I think this has been established, but the different law enforcement agencies, all the different sheriffs and police, they're all going to be able to talk to each other on this system?
Yes, sir, Commissioner. That is correct, Chairman. They are going to be able to use a coupler or an interoperability system to keep the VHS talking on the 700 megahertz system until folks can kind of plan, because it's different equipment that the 700 operates off of. The ability for the VHS to be any better on the system that we're getting is not there. It's still going to be poor, but we'll have at least what we have right now as we convert over to the 700. And then Weaverville and Woodfin, who we also dispatch for, will be able to plan into budgetary needs as they see fit to switch over to that 700 equipment. So the day that we switch over is not a drop-dead date. The two systems will be able to merge.
And what about federal and state law enforcement and emergency readiness? Will this all talk to them?
Yes, sir. When they talk about P25 compliant, there's an upgrade being talked about going on with Viper Radio, which is what the state works off of, and there's also an upgrade being talked about at the city to where they come on board as P25 compliant, and then this system will talk to all those folks. We would have the ability with a 700 system to buy equipment that would do that now, but it is kind of cost prohibitive. So we would probably wait till the state and the city made their upgrades for it to.
So this is dropping a stone in the water, and the ripple effect is going to go across Buncombe County as
Yes,
far
ma'am.
as
It can.
law
It can.
enforcement and
It's going to
protection of our citizens.
It's going to be, they have to step back and take a look at the cost of what they're getting. 700 megahertz is not cheap, and this option has a cost associated with it. But then when you step back and you look at the option, we know that we can't continue on with the radio system that we have in place, that radio system continues to degrade, and it's got some pretty good holes and officer safety issues right now in using it.
As the county attorney, in a donation like this, and I'm assuming that's what it is.
Yes, sir.
What about the liability of the company and if something goes awry? I mean, how is there a contract that says that
We have it set up on the contract. Of course, part of what they're asking for is in return for this that we help them, partner with them to make it a showcase system. But you're talking in terms of worst-case scenario if it doesn't work out.
Right.
If we can't make it work out here in the near future for a statement of work or acceptance as to how it and when and how fast it needs to work, then everybody can walk away, no harm, no foul. If we're into the process a year and a half from now and need to pull the plug, then they'll continue to stay on and maintain it for up to 18 months while we find another service provider.
I also understand now that we can, did you have a response to that,
Well,
Kim?
I was just going to say, we've written the contract just as if we had gone out and
Bought it.
purchased the system.
Okay.
We're holding them to the
Okay.
same. They've got sign-offs that they have to
Yeah.
meet and acceptance procedures. I mean, and it's a very tight contract. We
Okay.
didn't do it any differently with it being a gift than we would have done it with anything that we would have ever purchased.
And the other piece of this is that with this donation, you can then go and buy your individual equipment from whoever the lowest bidder may be.
Yes, sir. That is correct. It will allow us a little bit of time when the system goes up and the folks that want to be on that system using it to look at purchasing that equipment. And probably the best piece about it that I don't want to get lost as we explain is they're coming forward with a substantial gift or donation or putting the system in to have it as a showcase system in this area, which means that they've got a vested interest in making sure the system works correctly and keeping it up to spec. Thank you.
Good deal. Okay. Any other questions or discussion?
Well, if it's the proper time, I move that we accept this donation and pass this resolution.
Second.
Been a motion by Commissioner Peterson, a second by Vice Chair Stanley. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The resolution is passed 5-0. Next up,
It is two, Mr. Chairman, it's two, and also have to authorize the entry into the maintenance service agreement. As Kim was indicating, we can't have this without any maintenance service agreement as we would with any other IT.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we authorize the county manager to enter a 10-year management and service agreement with the Casidian Communication.
Second.
all right, there's been a motion to authorize a maintenance agreement with Casidian for this new system. That's been made by Vice Chair Stanley, a second by Commissioner Peterson. Is there any discussion of this resolution? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The resolution is adopted. Thank you. Next up, we have Mr. Johnson, Superintendent Johnson, with the city school budget presentation.
I thought you were going to do the voting delegate first.
We'll do that later.
Okay.
They're not clearing the room just because. Trust me, Alan.
Nobody likes you, Alan.
Well, I've heard I do all kinds of things to people, so I can handle anything.
There's no reflection.
I was about to ask if Casidian help schools out, too. They're helping out at Buncombe County.
But thank you. I hope they pull up the PowerPoint for me. But Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I want to thank you for inviting me to come before you tonight. It's always a pleasure to come before you and speak about a subject dear to my heart, and that's our city schools in Asheville. Before I begin, I want to thank my colleagues, Dr. Dunn and Dr. Baldwin, for allowing me to go first. It reminds me going to the dinner table. You know, the first one at the dinner table oftentimes gets the best pickings, but I'm sure we'll be able to leave a few things for you and won't get all the money. So just thought I'd share that with you. But I'd like to, on behalf of our board and our staff, I want to thank you. But I'd like to introduce tonight I have with me Mr. Gene Bell, our chairman, is with us, Mr. Bell. We also have Ms. Peggy Dahlman, who is over with us as well. I'd like to thank both of them for coming and being with us tonight. So with that, I'll begin. And Wanda told me I had about an hour and a half, but I'm going to keep it to 15 minutes, maybe a little bit.
Yes, you are.
Okay. So a little bit about our school system. Very familiar with this, but just for your viewing audience, we have In Asheville City Schools, we have 5 magnet elementary schools, which are all choice. Our parents get to choose and select which one of these schools that they attend. We have Asheville High School serving about 1,000 children, and we have the School of Inquiry and Life Science, which is a Gates-funded small high school serving about 200 students. So within and then we have a middle school program serving about 800 children, along with Randolph Learning Center, which has a milestone coming up Thursday night. Randolph Learning Center will have 5 students graduating in the commencement exercises on Thursday night at Asheville High School. That's the first time in that school's legacy, and we're very proud of that. And then following up, one 5-star preschool program serving about 200 free and reduced lunch children. A bit about us, we're a growing district. I'm pleased to announce to you and to our audience that if I could take this chart out to the left about 20 years, we've had a declining enrollment in our school system for that period of time. But as you can look in 05, 06, declining 06, 07, but then we leveled off for about 3 years. And this past year, we have over 121 new students in our school system. So we're growing, and that is very positive to us, and we are appreciative to our parents and community for supporting us. Demographics, we're changing. We have 60% white students and about 40% minority, and that includes African American, Hispanic, Asian, and multiracial. Our second largest minority group is multiracial. Poverty, and this number represents data from the census figures that we received back in 2008. So 28% of our students who live in Asheville City, students are poverty rate as determined by the census. But in 2009, our latest figure, I wish I had provided it, was 31.79. Our free and reduced lunch is about 50%. So you look at the national census data, we're running about 31%, and then our free and reduced lunch about 50%. Our students are becoming poorer, and we're seeing that and we're feeling it year by year. The budget that we have to operate with, we're very thankful to the commissioners for providing the excellent support that you do for us every year, as well as the support we receive from our families and community. Our budget is ranging around $60 million, and of that, we receive about $21 million from the state, or 35%, and about $24 million, or 40%, from local. And I will tell you that is unique in today's funding formulas. Typically, the state is the majority or funder in most school systems, but we are unique because we receive the supplemental tax as well as sales tax. But in this number, it does increase it a little bit more, is over $4 million of bonds that we have in our local budget that we're paying back for the QZAB and QSCB for renovation of Asheville High School. So that does stratify that local number a little larger. That includes about $4 million. So that local budget really is about $20 million coming from the commissioners. By expenditure, this excludes capital outlay. You can see that we spend about 79% of our budget, of that $52 million, on salaries and supplements and benefits for our employees. But we do have contracts and utilities, which the largest expenditure in that area would be the utilities that we do have to pay every year. Other items and contracts include the SRO contracts for Asheville Police Department, copier leases, as well as a custodial contract for cleaning of Asheville High School. Supplies include materials, custodial supplies, etc. Update about our state public school fund. This is the latest information I have for you as of last week that was sent to the governor as of June 4th. We've received in state cuts about $1 million, a little over $1 million. And you add that to the discretionary cut that was passed along from the previous year, approximately $1.8 million have been cut from our school system from the state for this current upcoming year. And how does that translate into employees and other items? Well, we lost 10 positions from this new cut that came of the $1 million that I shared with you, and then 15 from the previous existing discretionary cuts. So all of that is to say about 25 positions have been cut from the state budget of that $1.8 million. Now, obviously 25 positions are not equal to $1.8 million. What I didn't share with you but does include that $1.8 million includes cuts to textbooks, cuts to instructional supplies, cuts to staff development, cuts to school building administration, cut to school transportation, cut to school central office line items. So how are we going to respond to these cuts? What are we doing? One thing that has been a saving grace for us has been the federal grants, EduJobs. We received this money for this purpose of being able to add these positions back and save these positions. This is a one-time federal funding that will expire in September of 2012. So our plan is to use some of these dollars to place back these 25 positions that I indicated that were eliminated. Some of the cuts also to local budget we'll use through EduJobs. Another important one for us is our preschool that I mentioned, with the cuts to More at 4 that are outstanding right now. We will believe we'll use some of the EduJobs to help fund the cuts to More at 4 that impact our preschool program. Another one that you're very familiar with are the federal grants fund, the RO stabilization and stimulus. We will be expending all of those funds, almost $2.3 million, a little more than $2.3 million by September of this year. And we utilize these funds over the past 2 years for funding our Title I program, funding our exceptional children, and then state stabilization. When the state cut last year the number of teachers, teacher assistants, and clerical, we utilized this one-time money to help us get to where we are today. But those positions, many of those were temporary, and they were transferred back to the state and local funds. Another area of federal funds have been the race to the top. This has been a significant effort upon our state. We were one of few states to receive race to the top funds, and Asheville City Schools' portion of that is $297,000. And what we're doing, we're hiring instructional technology facilitators. These are actually master teachers who will be working with other teachers to help improve student achievement. We're trying to get student engagement. We're trying to find out how to turn the kids on to learning. Because once a kid and a student will get a hold of a laptop and find learning fun, that's part of the issue for us. And these are master teachers, these tech facilitators that we'll use, as well as providing staff development for our other teachers. About our local budget, I'm pleased to certainly stand before you and say with a growing school district, it needs additional funds. So this approximate number that we have expected from the county appropriation is a growth in ADM. Those 121 students that I mentioned to you does impact our ADM, as well as a proportionate share of the county appropriation. Our increase from approximately 13% of the county appropriation to 13.72 certainly impacts additional revenue for us. So we're very pleased with a growing school system with additional students. It takes additional dollars and resources, so appreciative of that. Our local budget, we will have a net loss of about 11 positions, mostly classified. I'm pleased to report that our Board of Education is being proactive, and upon my recommendation, we are offering a retirement incentive for any classified staff of $8,000 for them to retire versus us have to cut them. And on the surface, one might think $8,000 is a lot of money, and it is, certainly is a lot of money, but it's a savings to the school system because basically in an incentive, if we had to lay these folks off, we would have to pay their health insurance for 1 year, and the health insurance is about $5,000. And also, if we had to lay them off, we'd have to pay a portion of the unemployment insurance and their salary. So we figure depending upon which employee they were, that could range from $6,000 to $10,000 to $12,000. So you're looking anywhere from $20,000 of a laid-off employee versus $8,000 who will go to retirement. Makes good business sense for us. So we had a couple of takers on that, so that means less people we have to cut and lay off. Contingencies. We are still dealing with a charter school lawsuit that's pending. We're waiting for the judge's decision on that now, so we are holding identified resources to deal with that if that does go against the school system. Senate Bill 8 is another state bill that is pending out there now. I believe it was taken out of the state budget, but I believe it is still pending as a standalone bill. And then the Fund 1 district is another item that was taken out of the Senate budget, but it is still remaining a standalone bill. So those are three areas that I recommended to our Board of Education to have contingencies for. What if a worst case does not occur? And we're hoping that this is what will happen. It is not as dire as we may believe. We'll add back some of the eliminated positions is what we plan to do. That retirement rate, we understand now that there's a higher retirement rate than we budgeted for and expected, of the sum of about $239,000. So we will utilize some of those contingency funds to pay that retirement rate that's higher than we anticipated and budgeted for. And then very important to us are those cuts for More at 4. You may be familiar that the legislature has approved removing More at 4 from DPI and moving it to another agency. More at 4 has been cut more than 20% overall, and the lottery funding that was in place for More at 4 has been reduced. So we know there are going to be less resources for parents to access for More at 4, which will impact our preschool program serving the 200 free and reduced lunch students I mentioned earlier. So we're trying to plan for worst-case scenarios to help that if we can. Moving to capital, this is a huge priority for Asheville City Schools. Our annual capital outlay appropriation is about $1.2 million, and we utilize those funds for repairs, renovations, and a number of other things. But let me give you an example. We have a roof on our Asheville Middle School right now that we've gotten some bids for. We need to replace it, and it's going to cost about $500,000. So $500,000 for one roof, and we receive about $1.2 million for all of our other schools. We're struggling to keep up with the needs that's upon us, particularly with older facilities. Additional state cuts, we're concerned about 2012, 2013. Dr. Baldwin and I met this morning, and one of our strategies was we get through this budget, how do we deal with the next one? And, you know, it's almost, we have to figure out how do we deal from day to day and week to week. Used to we looked at 2 year, 3 year, 5 year. Now it's the point, how do we survive the next school year? So that's pretty much on our minds. EduJobs funding will be depleted, as I mentioned to you. Our building capacity, if class size is reduced, I think it's admirable that the legislature is trying to reduce class size. I think we all want that. I think there's some concerns about we have with it that if it's reduced, that's being planned, we may not have adequate space to place the teachers in the areas that we have to place them because of our size and smallness. We may have to go to mobile units because of the state requirements. Aging facilities versus growing student population is another issue for us. A little bit about aging facilities. Just mentioned to you that Isaac Dixon, I think, is about 60 years old. And we have some major construction issues going there that we need to replace the building. We need a new facility there. And then Asheville Middle School has a number of major issues and renovations that are needed. The roof I mentioned to you. We have some architectural renderings that were provided before our board a couple of years ago. Our plan would be to, at this point, Dixon in particular, would be to demolish it and replace it on the same site with a new modern building. And then Asheville Middle School, for that much, we would probably demolish most of it and build it again back on the same site. Because we don't have any other land in Asheville. Obviously, that's a premium, and we believe the schools are in good locations now, so we would not want to do that. One thing I will mention that Asheville High School we have applied for, and with your support and County Manager Green's support, we are utilizing the Quality School Construction Bonds and the Quality Zone Academy Bonds of about $6 million to renovate that historic building. If you haven't been in it lately, I encourage you to go. The hallways are beautiful with new lighting, new HVAC system. We just put in a sprinkler system in that historic building last year. Did not have a sprinkler system. It's got one now. We're very pleased with that. And then this year we're renovating science labs. A little bit about our vision. Where are we headed? Well, you probably saw some information in the paper today about how are we going to target the gap. And we are very serious about this, and we are looking at extending our school day by 30 minutes out of elementary schools, hopefully for next year. And we're talking with our teachers about that and our parents, because we believe that we've got to employ new strategies if we're going to be serious about this and eliminate the gap, and as well as provide additional programs that will benefit all students. So I'm very much a part of that. Digital literacy. We know that this is a way to get at it, providing, making kids excited about learning. As you can see, there's a young man trying to explain to me something I'm not doing correctly right there. But that was his program. I got up and sat at his computer. He was teaching me. So Digital literacy, these kids love it. They're good at it. As you know, you can walk in the mall and you see the kids, they got their head looking at their phone, they're texting. That's what drives them. And we've got to find a way to connect them. And digital literacy is a way to do it. This is an initiative that you certainly are aware of. We have placed a laptop in the hands of every ninth grader of Asheville High School. And I want you to know we gave them out. We're collecting them back out of 200, I believe it's 300 ninth graders. We only had 2 not returned. That tells you the accountability and the teachers and other administrators. I take my hat off to them for making sure that they were very organized and diligent about that. But our other goal is to get them to the hands of all students next year, and we have some grant funding that we're looking at that will help us. We're known for being innovative and trying to come up with new ideas to target our children, and that's what we're continuing in that legacy. So I will take any questions if you have them this time.
Are you also looking at the year-round school model in terms of dealing with the gap as well as achievement? And
Well, actually, we left a meeting today at one of our schools at Jones Elementary School, and that topic came up as the research that we've looked at pretty much shows students need additional time in school, and we've seen that helps all students, not just the gap. It helps all kids, and that's why we're looking at extending our day in the elementary school by 30 minutes. Another, some research that we've done, the Assistant Superintendent Mr. Cyrus is here and has done a lot of work on this area, has to do with summer loss. We're finding that students who do not have really engaging activities in the summertime actually lose more in the summertime, which really stratifies the gap. The data that we have and the research we've shown shows that while students are in school, whether they are poverty children or they're from children from wealthy families, school's working. Schools and teachers are engaging these students. They are learning and their achievement levels are increasing while we have them. It is when we don't have them is when they're losing, and then the gap stratifies year after year after year after year, and the data, supports that. So year-round school is something that we've talked about, and I believe we're going to, with the board's support, we will be researching that maybe next year, bringing parents and teachers and others together to study. What are the advantages, what are the disadvantages? But that would take community support in order to make that happen.
I don't have a question. I just have a comment. I really appreciate you and Superintendent Baldwin meeting and talking and trying to share common goals. And I know that I see you together a lot. I think that's real healthy because we have problems funding. You have massive problems with the state. I think you have less problems here, but you got to make the budget. And I appreciate you working to try to work together, both of you. I've many times seen you meeting and trying to work out mutual problems, and that doesn't happen in every school district. I'm familiar with some that they wouldn't say hello to each other, much less try to work things out. And I think your boards have met together, and I just commend you for all that. That's so important in these tough times.
Well, I thank you for that, and that is something that we plan, and we know it benefits our community for all of us to work together and try to share resources and solve problems together. So it's been a pleasure working with Tony and his board as education as well.
I do have one budget-related question. So you talked about the new HVAC system at Asheville High. Are we starting to see decreased energy bills from that?
Thank you very much. We have, along with our new windows.
Right.
We just replaced those historic windows past year with the QZAB funding. Like the courthouse was done, I think Juan and I had this conversation. We're expecting utility bills to decrease because just those windows, the old ones had the ropes in them, and we had them closed shut. The teachers couldn't even open them because we were afraid they would fall on them. So we had them nailed shut. They couldn't use them when we had the old storm windows in front of it. So we took all of that out. Now we went back to the historic color of those windows, and we're able to open them and close them. They got screens on them, but we're expecting to have our utility bill decrease. That's what we've been told.
I've just got to make Mr.
There's no telling how many ends of fingers those windows have whacked off over there.
I'm making some little comments here back and forth, having taught under his principalship at Asheville High. There are two things I want to say. First of all, to get air conditioning in those buildings having taught home economics there, when you've got stoves and cooktops and all that going, you've got one window in your room and it doesn't open, and you're teaching home ec. Yay for the air conditioning. I love that. And the other thing I want to say is that many of the years when I was there, people would come to Asheville High. Great job in keeping that building, because they would say, "Is this the Biltmore House?"
Exactly. I get that
And
all the
we'd
time.
say, "No, it's down the road a little bit." But that's what people think. It's such a beautiful, beautiful building.
Well, I thought
and we've
about
got
offering
to
an
keep
admission fee. Say, yes, it
There
is,
you
and
go.
maybe we could gain some dollars that way. But
But great memories from the years there, and thanks for keeping all that
well, I will
together.
invite you to come and take a look at our science labs, because we're transforming those old rooms into with new windows and new science labs that are going to be state of the art. We're very proud of that. So, again, thank you for your
Thank you, sir. We appreciate your report.
Any other questions? Thank you, Superintendent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next, we'll hear from Superintendent Baldwin with the Buncombe County Schools.
Chairman Gant, members of the board, the first thing I want to do is echo Alan's statement in that we certainly appreciate the support each and every one of you have provided for our school systems. And I have no doubt that Dr. Dunn will echo my statement as well. Best example I can give you regarding that support is the commitment that you maintain through these very difficult times to provide those operational funding for us to be able to open our Eblin and our Kuntz intermediate schools. And I will tell you that is incredibly admirable on your part. Let me also say that that represents a total for both schools of 28 certified positions and 23 support positions. That translates in these very difficult times in people having opportunities for jobs. So on behalf of those people who anxiously await their letters to recognize them as new staff members, on behalf of them, thank you. I want to start out with just three pieces of information. And Alan talked about the poverty level, the poverty rating. I'm going to go a little bit different angle on that, and that is the number of students that qualify in Buncombe County schools for free and reduced meals. That is what our Title I budget is based on. And over the past 10 years, you've seen that increase go from 34% to 52%. We have incredible needs out in our school communities, and that is certainly shared by our sister city school system as well. Secondly, the average amount of money that's spent per pupil in the United States is $10,499. That's per pupil. In North Carolina, that is $8,451. And in Buncombe County schools, that is currently $7,607. That's our per pupil expenditure. Now, that will reduce next year. But we did have an organization, North Carolina Civitas, that recognized this. I think it translates into extremely high value for the dollar, and we're proud of that. The average cost to educate a pupil from kindergarten through graduation in North Carolina is $142,027. In Buncombe County, that's $127,294. Once again, we believe that is high quality for the dollar. And I get a lot of questions regarding central office. I think all of us in our school systems across the state do. We have 21 central office positions that are currently defined by the state and funded through state funds. And as I'm going to show you in just a couple of minutes, one area we certainly are going to target with reductions is central office once again. We're going to be taking away 4 positions. And in 2011-12, there were only 12 out of a total of 115 school systems across the state that, again, had a lower efficiency rating in terms of the number of central office administrators compared to the number of pupils. And we are the 11th largest school system in the state of North Carolina. A little bit about our budget. We're a little bit different from the city system. As you can see, currently, 2010-11, 58% of our budget comes from state funds, 25% courtesy of local funding through the commissioners, and then 17% federal. The reason we have two charts is that in 11-12, that's going to change just slightly. And the reason being is that federal funding is decreased significantly because of the loss of stimulus funds. And the stimulus funds primarily address Title I and special needs, two of our populations that have the highest needs of any students inside these school buildings. That money is gone. Again, that is the cliff. That is, I think, Alan and I called it the tsunami. Whatever you call it, it's gone. September 30th, 2011. This is a very important slide, and by the way, we've taken this presentation out to every one of our 6 school districts and shared it with our advisory councils and communities. 84% of our budget is in people, human resources. I think that's a good thing because we are all about people. We should be. But as time goes on and we have sequential cuts, you reach that point where school systems such as Asheville City and Buncombe County are cut to the bone, where the only place you can go is in those human resources. A little bit about the budget history. 2011-12, this will be the 4th consecutive year of cuts that have come to the school system. In 809, $2,023,757 was the total funding loss, and that came about through 2 reversions. In other words, we sent money at mid-year and we sent money at the end of the year back to the state. You may recall the dreaded word furlough. I saw Dr. Green's face kind of have a scowl. The dreaded furlough. We never could figure out how to furlough bus drivers since they had to be on duty when kids were there in the building. In 2009-10, again, second round of reduction, $16 million in state funds. In local funds, we had a reduction, $738,000 some dollars, and then the increased costs. And as we all know, health insurance, retirement rates, the employer's contribution continues to increase. Thank goodness those same stimulus funds I talked about earlier were available for us because we truly believe it averted a crisis for all of us in North Carolina public schools. In 2010-11, currently, we have a budget that represents a $2.5 million loss in state funds, as well as additional costs, health insurance, retirement benefits that must be paid to those local employers of about $314,000. I'm asked about positions. Over this period of time, we have had a total of 136.5 positions. And I say positions now because we have been extremely fortunate as a large system. We've been able to save people within our family. But what we all have to understand in the school business is once that position goes, there's an effect. At the high school level, it could be a loss of course offering. It could be class size that increases at the elementary or middle school. But again, those represent positions, and you can see how those were broken out. I talked about a reversion. Early on, the term was reversion. It is now an adjustment. In both cases, they are discretionary. It is up to us where we find that funding. For 2010-11, that was $5,327,936. In 11-12, that state budget continues this amount because, again, it's not returned. Once it goes, it doesn't come back. And it's going to add the budget that I'm going to show you that's now on the governor's table, adds an additional $2,079,299 in discretionary adjustment for Buncombe County schools. Our concern, our focus, has already gone to 2012-13, where that same adjustment now is added $1.24 million. So when you total over these 3 projected years, we're talking of adjustments back to the state of $8,647,207. Here's what we believe. Here's what we're about. This has been in place since our budget planning started 4 years ago. Here's what we believe. We think it is essential to ensure high school students meet graduation requirements. If you want to talk about reform in education, it is at the high school. Increased graduation requirements, math, social studies, other cores are on the way. Makes sense. It is a globally competitive environment we've got to prepare those graduates for. It is here. It's not ahead of us, it's here. Provide a sound K-3 foundation of balanced literacy. We believe this strongly. We've come to you and talked about successes with Graduation Initiative. This is what it's based on. We've seen data after data that if that foundation from K through 3 is not established for our kids, we see the pattern continue on. They have to have it. All too often, when they reach that age to consider dropping out, you see that pattern that foundation was not in place. Work towards equity in curriculum. We, across all districts, we're a large system. It's very important that a family that lives in Inca, for whatever reason, transfers to the North Buncombe district or vice versa, that they have as much as possible, they have the same opportunities for quality instruction and curriculum. And finally, preparing students to succeed in a 21st century global economy. Here's our funding priorities. We've said this since August. Regardless of what the budget, final budget, comes to us from the state, this is what we believe we're going to protect. We're going to find some way to protect. Number one, classroom teachers. That is our first priority. Thank goodness the state has agreed with us. Second, K-3 teaching assistants. For a while, we believed it, and you have just told you why I believe it so strongly, that whole support system, that need that's there for our youngest students coming in, it takes the whole support system, not just the classroom teacher, but those assistants inside those classrooms. Instructional support. What is instructional support? That's our counselors. If there's ever been a need for counselors, social workers, dropout prevention specialists, it is now in the communities where our kids are coming from. And our media coordinators. And we'll talk to you about technology. 21st century, globally competitive environment, technology is integrated in all curriculum that addresses that. Media coordinators, it's not the old library that Tony Baldwin walked into at T.C. Robertson back in the early 70s. It is a high-tech center. It is the technology center of the school. Very different. I'm going to ask you to look at your handout. I don't want to create any Mr. Magoo's, and I think those numbers may be a little difficult to read off the screen. The first handout I have given you, I believe, is good information. It is actually a comparison of what the governor's budget, House budget, and actually two versions of the Senate budget. And these numbers, by the way, are the impact by line item to Buncombe County schools. These aren't state numbers. These are Buncombe County numbers. These are our best estimates. The first thing I want to focus your attention to is in the left-hand corner under increase in negative budget. If you follow all the way across, you're going to see, in terms of the Senate, the far right, version 1 on May 27th, and then the final version, May 31st, and that represents, by the way, that far right budget version from the Senate is now the legislative budget that sits in front of the governor. Look at the change and increase in terms of, again, that discretionary adjustment. It goes from 11-12, $76,313, and it moved up to the category of $2,079,299. And again, I've cautioned you regarding our concern for 12-13. That's one of the key differences we saw in these versions. On a positive note, if you will follow all the way down to teacher assistants, and again, look at the different versions, you will see that actually the House version on teacher assistants cut grades 2 and 3, cut teacher assistants grades 2 and 3, the allotment funding. The Senate, in their first version, cut grades 1, 2, and 3 regarding teacher assistants. But the final version, that blank, we celebrated because that meant that funding came back into the budget. So, as I've said before, our priority, K-3 teaching assistants, the state now has joined us. We're a little shaky, but they've come around. And so that is extremely important to us. In fact, what that will allow us to do, it will allow us to take off the table for elimination those state funding instructional assistants outside of K-3. That's about 80-some positions that we're now going to be able to add back in. So I've got a lot of people, I think, that are thankful for that. Thought this was interesting information for you. The next handout that you have is specific to what our strategies are. Again, you see the categories listed on the far left. If you'll follow to the first column on the right, the continuation budget, that's our current budget. That gives you a number. Again, these are Buncombe County school system figures. Next column is the state. This represents, again, the budget as it sits on the governor's table at this time. And then in the far right, you'll see our strategies. I'm not going to go over all of these categories, but I do want to recognize just a few. If you'll go to reduced funding for central office administrators, you'll see that it's our commitment this year, even though the Senate cut is at 17%, our commitment is at 31%. And I say this because I've come out loud, strong and loud, when I've met with our staff in the district, and I've talked to our principals and said, look, if you're in danger of taking hits out there, you rest assured we'll take them at that central office and more. And so I intend to do what I say. You'll see that there's a serious reduction in instructional supplies. Here's the positive. We should all be so proud of living in Buncombe County because the efforts that I've seen that have gone into raising funding, actually bringing instructional supplies into the schools, whether it be the faith-based networks, whether it be efforts from our media and the Eblin Foundation and Clear Channel, has been absolutely incredible. We're going to need to count on that help again. But as principals have told me from the start, if cuts have to be made, let's first look at non-human resources. And that's what we've done. Also, an area that I want to bring your attention to that I think impacted both Mr. Johnson and myself is the loss of the flexibility to use our lottery. I'm not sure what the city school system actual figure was, but we had committed $1.2 million of our lottery. We moved that into teacher positions this current year. We had hoped to have that flexibility next year, but it's not there. But I can assure you that's something that we're going to work hard to request for in 12-13. Another category I want to address is the reduced funding for transportation of students. You'll see that that's a fairly small cut from the state budget. That's 2.49%. The reason that we're going to protect that and fully fund it is, you may or may not know, but what is also in the budget is an increase from 180 instructional days to 185. So one of those areas that we immediately think about increased costs are transportation. So that's why we're protecting that particular area. Finally, loss of federal stimulus funds. You'll see that figure. It's $9,269,419. That is going to represent, from a standpoint of human resources, some cuts in support personnel, primarily part-time positions. But again, those positions were based upon a 2-year run of stimulus federal funding that will be gone. Issues and concern, I think majority of these matches what you saw from Alan. The final version of the budget, when will it be here? What will be the governor's response? We await that. Flexibility and ABC transfer. I talked about the lottery. ABC transfer, simply put, is the flexibility that we as school systems have to maximize our budget by taking positions and dollar allotments and shifting them across categories to maximize that budget. That is extremely important to each and every school system in North Carolina to balance their budget. New legislation, Senate Bill 8 was referred to, Fund One school system. That's also a concern because of financial implications. 2012-13. I have to caution everyone I speak to regarding a budget that we have to be leery of what's coming in 12-13 because of the loss for us, $5.3 million of EduJobs Fund, and then the additional adjustment, that's $1.2 million that we anticipate to see in 12-13. Now, my staff, and I appreciate them being here, Mary Parker, our Chief Finance Officer, and Jan Blunt, our Communication Director, made me promise as I was driving over here not to end on a negative note. I'm not going to. What I'm going to say is regardless of what that final budget is, Mr. Johnson mentioned Race to Top funds. We're fortunate we have $2.9 million over a 4-year period. That is going to 3 primary initiatives that regardless of the budget challenges, we are marching on. The first of those is a Global Schools Initiative. We are one of 13 systems in the state that are partners, have partners in that particular initiative. We're going to see wonderful ways to bring global education into our system and also to allow staff and students opportunities to experience that global network firsthand. Secondly, STEM education. Science, technology, engineering, math, crucial for the global, competitive 21st century world out there. We are proud in that Race to Top funding will allow us at the middle school level, we're very proud of that, to initiate some specialized curriculum called Project Lead the Way that will focus on that STEM education. Hopefully, we will be able to expand that into our new career education center in the future that will be focused on STEM. And third, technology. Again, we're marching on. Our capital committee has identified a 2-phase program where we intend to put hardware, standard hardware that will be found in each and every classroom in Buncombe County schools, all 41 schools, high school all the way down to kindergarten. Again, thank you for allowing me to present our budget information. Do you have any questions?
How are you funding another fourth of a month in all this? Did the state fund that fourth of a month?
Well, as I said, we're going to protect transportation because we know that there's costs that come with an additional 5 days. But I really want to applaud Asheville City system because, you know, I talk a lot about a globally competitive environment. I think it's time we really got serious about instruction. And are we truly able to prepare our kids on 180 instructional days? So I don't want to paint this as a bleak picture, but it is a financial concern.
So is there an increase in teacher salaries and other people's salaries for that additional fourth
That
month?
will be handled
Or was
by,
that already there to start with?
Right. I believe the
Teachers
correct,
being paid now on 9 1/4 months?
right. I believe the correct answer to that is that those 5 days will be converted from current teacher work days.
Okay.
They will become instructional days.
Can I just get a clarification about the lottery and the ABC flexibility? So, because I remember y'all came, I don't know if it was this year or last year, and requested, you know, this kind of emergency transfer, which made all the sense in the world because if ever we were in emergency. So what you're telling me is that this presented budget takes away that opportunity for y'all to come and ask for that?
I think the best way to answer that is that legislation was not extended to allow us that flexibility for whatever reason.
Okay, got it.
That's
So
that positive note he's going to end on.
that is, he is doing great by it.
I know, and he's smiling as he says that. It's not
So
extended.
Is
Smile,
ABC
smile.
flexibility the same type of, what was that one about? Just, because it's so counter, I mean, I thought the whole point was local control and, and so y'all can't
It's really
make
the
your own
ABC
determinations?
transfer is very much of a budgetary concept, and because public schools include both dollar allotments, flat dollar allotments for certain areas, as well as position allotments, it allows some flexibility to shift between those particular allotment categories. I know Mrs. Parker's here, and I'm sure she could probably give you about an hour workshop on ABC transfer flexibility. But take my word for it, it is crucial to all school systems in terms of being able to meet our budget demands.
And so I don't need the hour, but what you're saying is y'all are going to have less of that flexibility because of
There are some restrictions in this current budget that were not in the previous budget.
Okay.
But they have not handcuffed us to any great extent.
Okay.
Any thought about year-round schools, or is that possible? Not on the horizon. Any benefit, pros and cons, budget-wise?
Well, I've already made a note that one of our breakfast meetings, I'm going to be asking Mr. Johnson what kind of research he's coming up with. I do think I'm hearing that in a lot of different circles, and again, I applaud them. I think it is truly time that we have to look at our traditional model, and let's face it, 180 days, it's based on the agrarian calendar. It's time we look to see, is this truly meeting the needs of our students and what they're going to face when they walk across the stages at graduation ceremony? All 9 of them for Buncombe County Schools.
Well, Dr. Gardner and Brother Johnson, y'all have done a tremendous job with what you got here, and I'm truly appreciative, particularly when you got a bunch down there in Raleigh trying their best to destroy public schools in North Carolina. They're doing a pretty good job of that, I think. They're crazy.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
That wasn't exactly positive.
He just smiled.
Well, it's certainly honest, Vice Chair Stanley. You got a situation, they're cutting them every way they can. And that's the wrong place to cut. Next up, we have Dr. Hank Dunn, going to tell us about the AB Tech Community College budget and the state impacts.
And I've gone the opposite of these guys. I've gone low tech.
Let's see if it works today or not.
Thank you.
I do appreciate the opportunity to come before you as well. And I would have to say to my fellow educators, they're wonderful folks to work with. We love working with both of them. I think we've got a collaborative, collegial, in our world, relationship, and we're all suffering with the same thing. We're suffering with reductions in funds. And if you would have seen the paper today, you would have seen I used my same analogy, and Alan, you would have heard it before, that we're eating our seed corn. And it was a really tough winter this winter. And in January, when the snow was piled high and it was freezing outside and we couldn't go anywhere to buy food, we saw that bag of seed corn sitting over there in the corner. And even though we knew we were saving it for the spring and we needed it to put in the ground, we kind of grabbed a handful or two. And that's where we're at. And I think for AB Tech and for other community colleges, we're not sure what the harvest is going to be like. And I'm afraid we don't understand the ramifications of having eaten some of our seed corn. But I thought I'd try to share with you a little bit of what we are going through and answer questions there. For the community colleges, we ended up, if the governor signs it, and like Tony and Alan, nothing's kind of put to bed until the governor signs, vetoes, or whatever's happening there, but based on the current knowledge, we ended up with a 10.7% reduction in state funding. This is on the top of, like many other places, several years of already declining funding, several years of already having taken rescission, reversions, whatever you want to have them. And so 10.7 is a difficult number for us. We've already been cutting back. We've already been trying to do what we can. And I'll tell you a little bit about what that means for us. But another unfortunate side effect for AB Tech is there's been a change, or there is going to be a proposed change in the way we do our dual enrollment. And we're probably going to adopt the Governor's Career Promise Technician and Promise Scholarship and roll all of our dual enrollment efforts together. And that sounds good, and it probably is good, and it probably works well for lots and lots of folks. But AB Tech went into the dual enrollment Huskins arena in a big, big way several years ago. And those changes will actually have an effect on us that we believe will reduce our budget by another 3 to 5%. So because of that 10.7% reduction and our perceived conservativeness that it may be another 3 to 5, we're actually counting on a 13 to 15% reduction in our state budget this year. That's a big cut. What we have done, though, is try to make a commitment to the people who are there and have been there, that we're not losing folks. And we have made a heroic effort, and we've succeeded this year. We will not be laying off any full-time folks on campus, and I need to say on campus, because there were programs off campus that were cut. The Smart Start was cut, and obviously we'd taken over that program, and that program was not renewed, and so we have a person who's leaving there. We have several programs that were done in the prison system, and those programs are not being renewed, and so some of those are going away. And so it's not that we've not lost people, we've not lost people on campus. The issues that we have before us is that we're still trying to provide the same services we did 5 and 10 years ago. And part of that is that we are trying to meet the needs of everyone who's in our community. And that's a really difficult thing to do. So for next year, when we've gone through our budget process, if you'll picture a bullseye in front of you, we've sort of said we're going to concentrate on our core, and there are things we must do. The next ring out is things we should do. The next ring out is things that it's nice to do. And then there's a few things out there we don't know why we're doing it, but people like it, and we keep doing it. And those are gone. Just because people like to have them done, we're not doing them. And we've gone to the nice to do and cut those back. You may have read the paper a couple months ago in anticipation of this budget. We reduced a lot of our sections that we would call wonderful, nice things to do, but we don't have the ability to do our core. And we got rid of things, or reduced them. I wouldn't say we got rid of them. We certainly substantially reduced them. Things like our art courses and music courses and some of the things that we are really, this is an area that does those things. We're a great arts area, but we had to lose those. We've eliminated a couple of our programs this year, real estate program because the market had gone down. Our decorative restoration, which had been our program for years and years and years, there was limited people in that program and limited enrollment, so we've taken that away. We've had issues with other programs out there that we are saying to them, and I don't want to mention them publicly yet, don't want to scare the heck out of them, but there are 4 or 5 programs that we offer that they need to make sure that we are doing the right thing. At AB Tech, we've created a model where we're looking at 4 different attributes for any program. What's the quality of the program? How vital is it to the area? How viable is it? And then something I call SLEEPY, which just is an acronym that says, look at all the common sense things that go on, and can you make a decision based on those common sense things? And those programs will be extensively looked at this coming year, and by the time we get to next budget year, we'll have to make some decisions about those one way or the other. My fear, and I sort of said that to the paper yesterday when we did an editorial board meeting with Rose Johnson from Haywood County, my fear is that when the public comes to see AB Tech this coming year, they're really not going to see much different. You're going to come in, you're going to drive by, you're going to see buildings that are open, you're going to see faculty that are there, you're going to see the grass being cut and all those things that we normally do, but you're not going to know the pain that's gone through to actually get to that reduction. Less numbers of classes being offered, less choice in what's being offered. And I'll give you an example. In our humanities or our language classes, we used to offer French and Spanish and a couple other things just because we wanted a choice for you. Well, we're really coming down to mostly Spanish and maybe a couple French courses. And it's just choice being taken away and a difference in how you look at things. Is it terrible? Is it horrible? No, but it really takes away the educational experience that you can get. We've closed our Asheville Mall, and that was based on, again, financial decisions. It's a wonderful thing to do. Lots of people went out there. But in the grand scheme of things, do we need to move that money to do something else? And that's what we've done, and so it will close down in about 3 weeks officially. A minor thing, but we also need to talk about it because it's what I call a war on talent, and I'm sure the school systems have the same thing, and I'm sure the county has in some ways. Our folks have had no raises in 3 years. Because of biennium budget, they won't get a raise next year as well. 4 years without that. Now, most of our folks are committed to this area and want to stay in this area and will stay in this area. But after 4 years, if things had stayed the same and your salary was the same, which it is, that's great. But we've had costs of increase in gas and health and many other things. And so, in effect, people are really taking a reduction in salary. And that's really difficult. Even when you're the most dedicated folks possible, the cost of living needs to be accounted for. And there will be some people who will go to another place because in this environment, and we are again prohibited by offering raises across the board, the only way to get a raise is to jump to another ship. And as you go to the other ship, you negotiate a better salary. We're also doing something we call slushing, which is not a bad term, a little bit better than freezing positions. When a position is vacated beginning in the 2011-12 year, instead of freezing it and saying we're not going to hire it, we're going to slush it, which means for about 90 to 120 days, that position's got to stay empty. So even if there's somebody at the door saying, I want it, and we've got somebody we need, we're going to slush it for a little bit to kind of make sure we have enough funding to keep that open. So we will hire it. You can still be out advertising and doing all the diligence to get there. We just won't hire that position immediately on. And again, just other things that we've done, a reduction, super reduction in travel and memberships and registrations. And so our professional development of our staff is going to be decreased in half. Is that horrible? No. Can you do it for a year or so? Yeah, it's absolutely true. But in the long haul, you want your folks to be as qualified and as up-to-date in the things that they do. So that's an area for us. I would have to tell you that if it wasn't for the fact that we did a large number of self-supporting classes this year, and in our world, we have two types of classes. There are FTE-generating classes, classes where the state reimburses us money, much like ADM or for you guys. And then there are self-supporting, which must stand on their own, and they're charged a different rate. We actually expanded our self-supporting classes and had a pretty substantial increase in the tuition, if you'll remember those days as well. Got a little bit of ding on that for doing that because it was a tuition increase. But self-supporting tuition stays with the institution and does not get sent back to the state like all other tuition does. It was because of that extra money that we generated in self-supporting fees that kept us from having to do really what I call major layoffs. It was several $100,000 generated, and that money helped us not go down what I would call, the paper would say today, amputate. We went to the bone. We didn't have to cut the bone in half, but the bone would have been severed, and we would have amputated something if we hadn't had that money. So we are also looking forward to the new year a little bit with trepidation. We've made it. We will keep the majority of our folks on campus. We do have reduced offerings. You won't have selection. If you're listening to the sound of my voice, please come and register quickly because if you wait until August, there won't be any classes for you to come, so please come fast. And we won't be able to add classes like we've normally done. When we've come to the July and August and things are filling up, we've gone and said, let's add another class or two. Let's make sure we do that. We won't be able to do that quite as readily anymore because you only have the funds you have, and we have less of them. We have something called enrollment growth at the community college level, which means if you grow, you get more money. And so we certainly did grow last year. We were, I don't know how many Ray would have grown, but we were, there wasn't everybody that grew. In fact, some not only didn't grow, they declined. And we were fortunate to grow by about 11%. We're up about 7% this summer. But what we're really getting is because we're paid in arrears, we're paid a year behind, I'm paying for last year's growth or this year's growth with last year's money, and it was less than I needed last year. And so those are issues that we can struggle with. And I also wanted to end on a fairly positive note. The session wasn't totally horrible for us. Like many folks, we've asked over and over to operate like a business. Many of you know that we don't keep our own tuition. Many of you know we don't keep our own fund balance. Many folks have asked many times in the last few months, especially as we've gone out and talked about the sales tax initiative, why don't you guys just save money like the businesses do? Why don't you just take some money and over the next few years save it? We don't keep our tuition. We don't get any tuition that we keep. It's redistributed. But we've asked for, can we keep a fund balance? Can we do that? That did not pass this year. But there were some things that did pass. We do have now, unlike sounds like Tony and Alan did, we now have a little bit of flexibility on transferring between funds, which is wonderful because you've got a pot of money, and before it used to be you can only spend this for this and this line and this and this line. That 2% limitation has been taken away, and we've got a little bit more flexibility, which is wonderful. We also have the ability, what we call over-realized receipts. The state budgets for us based on an assumed number of people going to come to register at a community college, and if it's greater than that, it's called over-realized receipts, and they're going to allow a college who grows by more than 5% to use some of those over-realized receipts, if there are any. So hopefully, if we continue to grow, we can actually use some money this year that would be necessary. Basic skills just allows us to use some money in conjunction with developmental. And we also were given the opportunity that if we do not use state funds, and we're doing a building program or a major renovation program, we used to have to use the state construction office to get that approved, and it really added many, many weeks and sometimes months to the process. That has been taken out of that. So if we are doing a project with no state funds and we get permission from the State Board of Community Colleges that we have the expertise to handle it, we don't have to do that. That'll save us some time and effort. And again, we've been had some audit requirements eliminated. Before, if you had wonderful audits and you were doing great, you still had to have another audit. It's called an Eagle audit to make sure the first audit was okay, and that's been eliminated now. So if you have a good audit, you don't have to do anything else. So some of this is common sense, and then they also added some flexibility in how we do our investments. Overall, we're going to continue to meet our mission. I had a very hard question asked me yesterday by the editorial board. It didn't make the paper today. I don't know if it'll make the editorial. But they asked me, if things are as tough as they are, Hank, and you have to make a decision, will you give up your economic development efforts? And because you need to put it into higher education efforts. And the answer was no. We'll never give up the educational efforts, and we'll not give up the economic efforts. To grow in this environment means that we have to be committed to growing our region economically. And we also, that would be tempting to be our part of the seed corn that we dipped into. We don't want to do that, and we're not going to do that. We will cut something else instead of getting rid of those economic issues that we do. We're still strongly committed to workforce and economic development. We're putting more time and attention into the kinds of things we do with our businesses. We're trying, like the Dickens, to add more people who could actually go out and help businesses grow. And we're doing things like our foundation, which we formed in January, which is that big, hairy, audacious goal to grow 1,000 new businesses over the next 10 years. And you can't do that by eating your seed corn. And so we're not doing that. And at this point, I'd just like to open it up. Again, I paint the picture that it's certainly stout times. We will survive this one time, but I would like to echo Dr. Baldwin's concern. It's probably not 2011, 12 that the public will notice. The students will definitely notice when they come in their choice and selection. But next year, when we cut off one of our arms, you'll notice. Can I answer any questions?
Just a comment. I think you've done an awfully fine job of managing the difficult circumstance.
Thank you.
Let's hope it gets better.
We pray that it will. Other questions?
What's the enrollment now?
We have about 8,100 credit students, curriculum students, and we have about 18,000 non-credit students. We're about 26 or 27,000 students this year. We expect to continue to grow as long as the economy is doing poorly. Again, this year, I will use the example of our self-supporting classes. There was a potential that we could have not grown at all because when the tuition went up, we grew by 7%. People recognize we're still a bargain. We're still here. We're still trying to do classes that they need when they want them. And so I think people will continue to come. And if the economy doesn't recover, it will grow again next year in spite. And we've done things like K-12 has done, upped our class sizes, to fit those people in because we don't want to turn anybody away.
And at the May graduation, we graduated certificates or diplomas at over 900.
Yeah, a little over 1,000, actually.
1,000, sorry.
Yeah, we're growing and people are using us.
Thank you. Great.
Thank you for letting me come and talk to you today.
Thank you, Dr. Dunn. Sir. Okay. Next, we'll hear from Dr. Green on the county budget. You've already given us a message and had it out for discussion.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I just want to touch briefly on some of the items that that you're going to have to deal with in the course of the budget. As a reminder on a few things, what we did bring you was a budget of $302,961,437. That is up 1.7% over the previous budget. This budget is 93 fewer positions than what we had in 2011. We have been able to place all but about 5 of those people. A couple of those are still making decisions about school. In the course of this budget, we've contracted out a number of services. AB Tech Child Care Center is now being run by AB Tech. Resource and Referral has been contracted out. We will be contracting out prenatal, mountain mobility, and workforce development. So there's a lot of transition taking place, and that's where a lot of these employees are that are moving into other organizations. The departments did take a total of $7.9 million in cuts so that we're able to meet the other growing needs that we have. We did not cut education funding. You've heard all 3 of our doctors say that we didn't cut the funding for education. In fact, we did fund the new schools, which gave Asheville City School a bit more money also. That was a little over $3 million that we added to the budget. What we are finding is that the state budget is a little less damaging than we had initially thought when we stood here 4 or 5 weeks ago. They did put back a fair amount of the lottery funds, as the counties across the state said, we've committed these things for debt service, and we're going to have to raise property tax if we don't get the lottery funds back. They did put back an amount sufficient to cover the debt service. They did not shift school bus replacement to counties, and for that I am extremely grateful. They did change the proposal on misdemeanors. We still are going to need to house them from the 91st to the 180th day in local jails, but that's going to be done by contract. There's a revenue stream coming from court fees, and the state will manage that with contracts with the counties. And we will be reimbursed for the housing, the medical care, supervision, and transport costs for these inmates. There's still a couple of pieces of that legislation that we worry about. Probation officers are going to have some ability to put people in jail for 6 days for violation of probation, and they're going to have a lot more flexibility with that. We're still looking at how that really will impact us. And we did see that the state budget that's now with the governor decreases individual income tax rates by 1/4%. None of us get the privilege of living in 1 year. We are wrapping up fiscal year 11. We are going to wrap it up very well. You asked me the question when I stood here before, were we going to make it without spending the fund balance? And the answer to that question is now yes, we are going to make it without spending the fund balance. As we look at 12, we've got more fund balance appropriated than before, but we have still a really positive feeling about that. We think we have met the needs. We're going to be able to meet the programming needs without cutting services. And there's a lot of demand in many of our programs, especially our human service programs. And you can't stand here now and say, well, we almost have 12 adopted without worrying about 13, because 13 tomorrow becomes our reality, and how we manage through that. We will, as I mentioned earlier, we will post the fee changes behind with the ordinance next time so that we know what we're asking you to take a look at for fees. We have not incorporated any of those fees into the projected budget because we're just not having the growth in the construction that we've had before. Thank you very, very much for accepting a $6.5 million gift that will let us improve our radio system. That was tremendous. There's been a phenomenal amount of work done by our public safety folks, our IT folks, legal, finance, to get us ready to accept that gift and make that a really positive experience for Buncombe County. So thank you very, very much for accepting that. We are going through a period, too, where we're trying to take advantage of the low interest rates that we're able to borrow money with right now, just at a really low rate. And we're also getting very good rates on any construction that we're doing so that we're able to build out our construction plan. So a lot of good things are happening. They're included in this budget that we're having a hearing on tonight. Happy to answer any questions that you would have before we hear from the public.
Any questions for Dr. Green before we hear from the public? Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's get the public hearing started. 6:36, we'll start public hearing. 3 minutes if you'll give your name and where you live. Any comments on the proposed budget? Mr. Rice?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Sounds so good to hear the schools here for the first time in decades. It ain't all negative down in Raleigh that we're hearing. It ain't all bad. You got to do a little bit of feather fluffing to find out where the chicken's at. And I think it's good to have that dialogue that we're having. I think Raleigh has kind of stimulated some of the Democrats to start thinking again. And likewise, I think it's great for both sides. My concern is more of a general overview. When you look at the tax reevaluation for Buncombe County, you didn't do a reevaluation, therefore you let the tax money grow. I've already told you that. I've already given you information on how many, 40-some million dollars. Now, here's the other thing. You look at the tax rate that for the fire department and the ambulance, those things have been consistently staying. They're not coming up and down like they have been in years. You have left that the same. That's a tax increase. The city school tax supplement, it's staying the same or thereabout for all these years. You're not going to have another reevaluation until the 8th year. All this money is still increasing in different areas that I'm telling you about because it's staying the same. All right, Buncombe County's got a school capital program for schools. None like it in the state of North Carolina. Thank God for it. But on the other hand, here we are, brag about something about how good or how bad it is, but then turn around, we've got something good to say. We've got some positive things. But that's a tax increase to the county people. Even though it's for a good thing, it's still a tax increase. School fund balance coming from a teacher supplement. That has been staying at 6 to 8 million for the last 10, 12 years that we have consistently told you about. They don't have to carry a fund balance, but yet now, yous are using it, some of it, 2.5 million, I believe. They've still got 5-point-some million over there. This is another tax increase on the public that they don't know that it's sitting over there, and yous are supposed to be carrying your fund balance. Now we're here today, we don't have to use the fund balance. We're doing the gloom and doom for 2013. I'm not saying it's coming or it's not. Projections are projections. Thank God for facts. Let's look at the facts. Now the Capitol. We got a big $10 million building across the street over here.
You can wrap up, Mr. Rice.
Do what?
Okay, that's all. Thank you. Next. Thank you, Mr. Rice.
We'll finish up in public comment. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Any other public comment tonight? Yes, sir, Mr. Yeldon.
Thank you, Mr. Rice, for commenting that not all things bad are coming out of Raleigh, because I see some bad things coming out of this boardroom. I see totally ignoring what the people have said. So let's talk about facts. In year 2000, when I first looked at running for office, and I compared this proposed budget with year 2000, it's a 52% increase. If you extend that increase over the next 11 years, that's another 52% increase. Talk about seed corn. We ain't going to have no seed corn. Because where does the seed corn come from? It comes from the backs of the people that have minimum wage jobs or barely getting by jobs. That's why they're going to AB Tech, hoping they can get something that'll give them a better job. But as long as you're a tourism center and you play to the tourist industry, you're not going to have any better paying jobs. That's what's always amazed me about AB Tech. But that seed corn is going to be gone, folks. And you heard it today. Keep on doing what you do, ignoring the people. It's wonderful. Because eventually the people will get fed up. I'll tell you why they're going to get fed up. School lunches, city. increased from 30-some to what, 50-some%? Free lunches in the county, 30-some% to over 58%. What does that tell you, folks? The people are broke. The source of the seed corn is disappearing. And what are we going to do? We're going to increase the cost of a mobile home park. Oh, that's just the park owner. Well, I think somebody, and a lot of your educators up there, I think some of you have missed the mark. You don't understand that the seed corn comes from the working people. And you keep on going up on the rates, and you keep up on keeping the tax rates up. And you keep increasing your budget 52% since 2000. Where are you going to be? Nobody at any of these school meetings that I went to asked the question, where's the money going to come from? Okay, we have a year-round school. That sure ain't going to happen without an increase in the money. And by the way, how much is that equipment going to cost to be able to use that new system that's free? There's no such thing as a free lunch bill.
Thank you, Mr. Yelton. Any other public comment? Mr. Dunn, Dr. Dunn.
Just wanted to stay around for the public comment because Hank Dunn, AB Tech president. I just want to commend the commissioners. I know you're like everyone else. You're having to go through these budgets. It's tough times. You're doing the best you can. But you have held AB Tech harmless. You've helped us when we needed help. You've been there for us. And we appreciate all that you've done for us. And I just wanted to go on the record to say that publicly. We appreciate all that you do. And in these difficult times, and when decisions have to be made, we appreciate that you're making them. Thank you for all you do for us.
Thank you, Dr. Dunn. Any other public comment tonight? Yes, ma'am. Ms. Landis?
Reverend Lisa Landis, Glow Lady in the internet, GLOLADY will find me. And I was very appreciative that none of the services were cut. Unfortunately, URTV is not on that list. And I know that there was $1.5 million that was to go towards, and I didn't get to see, so I would like to know how much money was going to be designated for our public access television. Is that something that could be answered at this time, or do I have to wait again like other meetings? Is that a possibility to hear?
I'll be glad to answer that at the end of public comment. I'll have Dr. Green help me with that.
In public comment, you will answer?
I'm going to answer a lot of your questions tonight about URTV. Just go ahead.
You will answer?
Her time. I don't want to take her time that I'm talking to her, but you got 3 minutes here to give public comment.
Way cool. I'm really glad to hear that. Today in Raleigh, House Bill 577 was getting heard. I haven't heard about the vote of it, but that was for the medical marijuana. Ben Scales, the attorney who introduced the House bill, was a guest on one of the TV shows that I had co-produced. And he had stated that in the first year that it would be $250 million that the state would profit from. And it's like, I've been here several months now, and listening to you and hearing this jobs, we need jobs. But it's like, are we really willing to look at ways that we could revolutionize the economy, or do we keep in our class? Because that's something that I don't quite understand. People told me that you guys don't listen to me because I don't speak in your bureaucratic language. And I was always told that, the government was of the people, for the people, and by the people. So if you guys don't understand what I'm saying, then does that mean that you guys are not of the people, for the people, and by the people? So I'm looking forward to the public comment and getting some questions answered, because I'm going to keep coming in front of you. And maybe one of these days I'm actually going to have a list of things instead of just letting it fly off the top of my head. So you guys are teaching me a lot about bureaucratic stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Landis. Any other public comment tonight? Yes, sir.
Prophet Christopher. I was listening to your education in the county and stuff. I did some quick math based on 30 students when I was going to school. And I just talked to your people, and they said it's 20. But we'll go with the 30 figures since I don't want to redo the math. If you gave your teacher $40,000 a year, that means you're spending for a classroom of 30 students $260,000. $14,000 less than the budget for URTV. Ooh, a lot of smoke, a lot of smoke. So let's get rid of the smoke. What was the smoke? All the BS. The real truth is, URTV entered a contract with this county and with the city and fulfilled it beyond that.
All right, let's talk about the budget. This is not the overall public. I know you've kind of been out of it a little bit, but this is about our budget comment today, and then we're going to have public comment at the end of the meeting.
Then I'll just wait. I'm sorry. When I saw...
You're welcome, sir. You're welcome to talk about our budget.
Okay. Well,
But,
going back to the
you're
budget
right like
then,
everybody else.
it is interesting that mathematically, when I look at my education, and I grew up mostly in California, and when it comes to my spelling, it stinks. Because teachers accepted KAT as cat, as long as they knew what you were saying. And so when I got up to as an adult, went to college, I kind of considered, man, was California really messed up? Until I started dealing with the students of today. Students of today have no common sense. I had one guy say...
This is about our budget. I do want to
It's
focus...
going back to the budget.
Okay. Why don't you tie it back into our budget? This is what this is about.
And it is, because I'm sitting here watching people play with money, numbers, and as a person trained in forensic auditing, it really bothers me about how they said you need an hour of this to understand some of the ways the budget is being done. Well, if we the people can't understand what you're doing, it's very easy to steal from we the people, especially when the budget is not broken down into where anyone can actually sit down and go, okay, they're budgeting this amount for this. Well, what is this? I looked at your budget, and about 70% of it is confusing to me why so much money is being made or actually being spent, especially in education, because it's interesting. Part of the budget for education is based on the lottery, which we were promised that the money from the lottery would go for education. I've checked, and very little of the percentage of the money going from the lottery actually goes to the students. Most of it goes to pay for 2 or 3 principals in a school, plus assistant principals, plus staff, plus additional staff that we never had as a student when I was a kid. So I think that maybe you need to relook at the educational budget and say, gee, do we need 3 principals in a high school? Do we need 3 vice principals?
All right, thank you, Mr. Griswold. Any other comments on our public budget? Yes, sir. Mr. Fryer?
Mike Fryer, Fireview. In your budget, I saw one thing. I'd seen the whole thing, and I saw Ms. Green say everybody's cutting 3 to 10%. Well, how does a $26 million budget go to 28 million or 27.8? Sheriff's budget went up. It started out in '04 at 18 million when Mr. Medford left. Now it's at 27.8. That's almost $10 million. Where's the cuts? We got a building across the street over here that we're going to spend $400,000 on a new one of these rooms and 7 offices. There's going to be district elections, people. The people that are elected in districts, whoever runs can go to a library or a fire department and talk to the people in their district without having to come uptown to go see somebody in an office in a part-time job. David, you work full-time. You don't get to spend a lot of time in your office, neither do you, Holly. Anybody that wants to work in the district, if it's going to be Leicester, if it's going to be Fairview, if it's going to be Black Mountain, whatever the districts are broke down to, let's not waste our money. That is a total waste. You know, I've spoke to Miss Green. She said, what about renting offices? We don't need to rent an office. We got them. They're paid for. They're called libraries. They're called fire departments. Chairman should have an office. The mayor's got an office. That's it. Have a boardroom. Put more seats in, more than 28 more seats than what you have here. forget about the offices. It's nothing that anybody needs. It's a waste of time. And, you know, that's pretty well where I'm at. But the only other thing that I have a small problem with is at the first of the meetings, you say if you have anything, anybody knows anybody, and it's a conflict of interest. Well, we made 2 appointments for the city, one to the transit and one to this, what do you call it, town up here?
Civic
Coliseum or
Civic Center.
Civic Center. Well, so happened 2 of them people work at AB Tech. One of them people.
Okay, is this about the
But
budget?
that's.
I mean, this is the budget.
Explain it. I can explain it.
Well, I'm not asking. You're here for public comment on our
Okay.
budget, and that's what we're talking
On the
about.
budget,
today. We're getting
let's
way off.
just
and
quit.
I don't even know what we're
Truthfully,
talking about
just quit. You know, I explained to you the sheriff. You know, he wants 200 more thousand over what he had. Matiava stood here and says, at 527 prisoners, we'll have to hire more help. They have 400 or less prisoners right now. How come he can't back down there by 7 or 8 people and save $300,000?
All right, Mr. Farr. Thank you, sir. Any other comments on our budget proposal? Yes, sir. Dr. Byrd?
Dr. Milton Byrd, Buncombe County resident. I want to recognize, first off, no one sitting in those seats has an easy time dealing with this budget issue. Having looked at budgets myself, I know how challenging it is to communicate it and to get people to understand it. This is one reason why I would like to ask you to begin thinking about next year's budget as some interim steps to create public forums to talk about the budget, because I don't want to see an amputation become a decapitation. That's a rough word to use, but the point, we've got to start recognizing that if we're going to be moving it in more difficult times monetarily, that is going to come from the people, and the people are going to have to be part of the solution. If they don't understand, they will be part of the problem. Your challenge as leaders is to begin building a communication that reinvents the communication on this budget. It is so hard to understand for the public that if you don't take the time between now and next year when we get to this point, that there will be a great deal more turmoil over the difficult challenges of funding ahead. I ask you to really think about how you communicate with the people on this funding issue, how we can reinvent this difficult problem into a pathway of communication and solution where we establish trusting communications with the local government, because we don't have it at the state level and we don't have it at the federal level. We come to our local government where we can have trust and communication with. That's the ultimate challenge of leadership in service to the people, for the people, by the people, and now with the people. I want to compliment the work you do bureaucratically on getting to this point, but we need more because it's going to hurt a lot more. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Byrd. Any other public comment tonight on our budget? If not, I'll declare the public hearing closed at 6:55. Any discussion? Or let's see if there's a motion to adopt the budget, and then we'll take discussion and comment.
We don't adopt it.
No, not
Tonight.
not yet.
Oh, that's right. One more time. Okay. My mistake. I jumped the gun.
You're in a hurry, David.
I'm in a hurry. Move along. Very good.
Get her done.
All right. Great. Next up, we have the designation of the NACO voting member for the National Convention.
Mr. Chairman, I nominate Vice Chair Bill Stanley.
Y'all are just wonderful.
I'll second that. Any discussion? Any other nominations? All those in favor of designating Vice Chair Stanley as our voting member, say aye.
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 All opposed, no. Thank you, Vice Chair Stanley.
Good, yeah.
Next up, we have, let's see, board appointments. Weaverville's Zoning Board of Adjustment.
Mr. Chairman, I nominate William Church.
William Church has been nominated. Are there any other nominations? All those in favor of appointing Mr. Church to this board, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The motion passes 5-0. Adult Care Home Community Advisory Committee, we have 2 reappointments. Are there any nominations?
Mr. Chairman, I nominate Jen Hunter and Kelly Stamey.
All right. Jerry Hunter and Kelly Stamey have been nominated. Are there any other nominations? All those in favor of appointing those individuals, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. They are so appointed. Announcements. The next regular meeting of our board will be June 21, 2011, beginning at 4:30 p.m. The board plans to continue the June 21 meeting to June 28, and then again on July 25. So we'll have a 3-part meeting, a continuation meeting. Commissioner meetings can be seen on BCTV Charter Cable Channel 2 on Tuesday and Thursday at 8 p.m., Wednesday at 3 p.m., Saturday and Sunday at 9 a.m., or online anytime at buncombecounty.org. We will be, after public comment, I think we are going to have a closed session. Is that right, Mr.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Pursuant to General Statute 143-318-11A, sub 4, we have 1 economic development matter to discuss. And under subsection 3, we have 2 attorney matters, one under the attorney-client privilege involving a potential legal matter, and another involving a workers' comp matter. Anticipate no action from this from the closed session other than direction from the board.
All right. Now, before Dr. Green, before we do public meeting, I want to address. There have been a lot of issues about URTV. That is not in our budget. Is that correct?
No, sir, that is not in our budget. We are working with the city to see how we're going to move forward. They're inventorying the equipment that they've picked up. The channel has gone dark. And at this point in time, there is nothing in the budget for URTV.
And from the beginning, and I was here when it started, we told your leaders, you're going to have to find other funding sources. We negotiated a deal with the cable company to get all kind of equipment. We spent a lot of time making it happen, but we told you repeatedly, you're going to have to find alternative funding all along. All your leaders. You did 400,000 hours of broadcasting and didn't charge the people a nickel to do that. You did it for free. And now you're coming to us. We've always said we had discretion over the money we get from the cable companies. It's been that way from the beginning. Nothing has ever changed. We've always given priority to education, law enforcement, and our core services. That was the deal. It was always the deal. We told you this all along. The state changed the rules a few years ago, and your money got cut even more. We told you had to find alternative sources. We gave you a consultant to help you find ways to raise money and keep the thing up. One way you could have done it is charge even 50 cents an hour. You could have met your budget on your programming. But your board chose not to, and that's your prerogative because we didn't get involved in that because it's the public access. And so that's the way it was set up. That's the way it should be. You shouldn't be here. The money that your board asked for would have been 88% from public money, and that's not right. No other station operates like that. Every nonprofit I know pays their own way. And for whatever reason, URTV, the leadership of URTV chose not to do that. Now, we're going to try to keep it alive through other means. We're talking to the city. I know that Kathy Hughes is in regular contact with Lauren Bradley, I believe, with the city. We'd like to see something there, but we are not, this board, in my opinion, is not going to put money for URTV over education, law enforcement, and other core services we do. And we've never intended to do that. We never have. We did negotiate a deal. We got some money. We gave what was entitled to under the contract. We have always chosen and will continue to choose. I think anybody who sits up here is going to put priority over, you're competing with education, law enforcement, and core services. And in a tight budget year, there's no chance. Now, we're hoping maybe somebody could come up with another model. That's where you come in. Come up with another way to do it. Come up with something else. You got the equipment for now, but you got to move fast. And you've had years and years and years to plan this out. This isn't news. Because I've got notes where I told your leadership this years ago. We gave consultant, our John Howell, worked with you, met with you, told you this was coming, gave you numbers, gave you ways other places do it. There are other ways you could have done it. We don't get involved, but now you're here saying we need a bailout, and that was never in the plan, never considered. And we never told you that because we couldn't, because we knew the budget. We saw this budget coming down the road. Dr. Green has told us through the years this is going to be a bad year. We didn't know how bad until the budget came out. So that's the way it's been. I hope that there's nothing cut. There's nothing in there. Anything we're entitled to by law, we'll put out if someone wants to come up with it. And what's the amount, Dr. Green? You know, $4,500, but they have equipment right now. If somebody can come up, the city has equipment. So now you're dealing with the city also, and you're going to have to work with them because under the contract, as I understand it, the city the ownership reverted back to the city of Asheville for the equipment. Okay. Public comment, any subject, open mic. Yes, ma'am, in the back. Could you help her, Miss Landis? Thank you.
Hello.
Thank you, ma'am.
My name is Carol Taylor, Buncombe County resident. I would just like to know what went wrong, other than the alternative funding that you expected URTV to have. Is there like lack of professionalism? Is there any of these things that diversity differences that count? I mean, I just would like to know myself.
What I'll do, this is public comment. I'm glad to talk at the end and answer some. I'm going to write down your question. We'll try to answer them as best we can. So
okay.
If you could give comment, though, this is more.
All right. Well, my comment is I'm not totally understanding everything. And like some of the gentlemen and ladies said earlier, that I believe it's important to understand the whole picture. And of course I do not, so I won't apologize for it. So for me, I just would like to understand that if there's a new proposal coming, would it only go to the city or would it go back to the county? How does it work? That's what I would like to know, because from my personal opinion, I think there could have been a little more professionalism, a little less backbiting between everyone, a little more cooperation. And so having said that, I'd like to see what futuristic needs would be required and to whom they go to. Since you just said, I do believe, I don't know your name, sir, what is it?
It's public comment. I'm David Gant, the chairman of the commission. But
I don't
that's
know
fine.
this.
It's fine, ma'am.
But my question is that I would like to know what can be done and who to do it to submit the proposal as quickly as possible. That's what I would like to know, because I see value in public television. I wouldn't want to see it swept under the carpet for financial or any other reasons, because if it's of benefit to others. So whatever happened in the past, the lack of, the stuff that didn't happen, the stuff that could have happened, my only interest is to know what can happen, and to whom, and how fast, and what has to happen right now. So that is it, sir. I am done.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. Miss Lance, you can go, since you have the mic, you can go next.
I am Lisa Landis, Glow Lady, GLOLADY. You can see quite a few of my other shows that I've produced, over 300 hours. And it's like I come here and I look at that flag and I say my Pledge of Allegiance. And I'll tell you what, I'm really disgusted. It's like you hear one thing, you hear another, you get 1.5 million, designated, oh no, that's not your money, it's going to be used for this. And it's like, where's my First Amendment? Where can I hold my government accountable? There were shows on URTV that exposed the corruption in this county. We have had people who came up here to this stand and had said, what about this person? Oh, but you have to be quiet. We're not allowed to talk about things like that. Where can I redress my government as to things that are not done right, if not for public access? I have been in front of you guys for 3.5 years. Why couldn't we find more money? Do you know that it took two of us 2 weeks to raise $700? Well, who's going to volunteer? Who's going to volunteer to bring in funds? I'm tired of working for no money. You guys get cushy jobs. Why can't you donate some of your time to raise money? No, you are politicians. No, you are government. Government doesn't look after the people. Government looks after itself. I'm sorry, but that is what I see. And I'm tired of it. I'm tired of coming up and it's like, oh no, you were supposed to raise your own money. Well, how can we raise our own money when the negativity that comes out of is crap? It's crap. I'm sorry, Wanda Green.
All right,
you can sit there with a smile on your face.
No,
Excuse
no, we're not
me,
gonna
are you taking away my First Amendment? She's
yeah, I am.
sitting
Get
here.
out of here. Get out of here.
She
I
is
sure
sitting
am.
here, and I am.
Ma'am, you've got to respect the public comment time.
Excuse
here.
me. I was.
Okay.
I mentioned her.
Oh, you're through.
I mentioned
Who else
her
wants to hear
name.
public comment?
Excuse me.
Who wants public comment?
I will leave.
All right. Thank you. Yes, sir. You go right ahead.
Does that mean that you would throw me in jail? Because I found out that if I got thrown in jail, I would get national.
Let's go. Go ahead. You can go ahead. You go, please.
I need to ask a question before I start, though. I need to know from you if you all agree with what he said prior to the public meeting. Does anyone disagree with what?
Hey, we're not here to take
No,
polls.
I-
This is public comment, sir.
I just need
And
to
you're
know.
welcome to
Okay,
contact
fine.
our email, our phones, everything's in the book.
Okay, I'm Brother Christopher. I found out that when you certified public access for $274,000, you told the state that that's how much it would take to run it. $274,000. I thank you for the evidence that is now on record that proves that this board or the prior board presented a fraud to the state. The county, told the state that the budget necessary to fulfill federal law, the mandate to give public access, was $274,000. That means that $274,000 belongs not to the county. The county is just a pass-by. Yes. So when you go to jail, remember this day. Because everyone who, from the beginning, that started public access, told the state of North Carolina that the minimum budget necessary was $274,000. And he said, we got to raise money. Do you pay for your hamburger twice? I don't. You say, well, you should have paid 50 cents a minute. Or an hour. It doesn't matter. You see, why should we have to pay since it was already paid? And so the state messed up. Because it used to be just charter cable. It used to be just a paid grant to pay for the access to the public land. But y'all messed up when you made it a tax. One, charter no longer can deduct that $1.5 million as a tax write-off, as a business write-off. Anybody who knows taxes knows that, because it no longer is a business expense. All they're doing is collecting a tax. So now everybody who has video, audio, whatever, now pays for public access. Now you have more money. But the fraud is in the fact that you presented to the state that the minimum budget necessary to fulfill the federal law was $274,000. I thank you for finally firing URTV, finally dropping the contract. Because by law, all the money you have not paid to this point, to the time that you actually officially declared that the contract was no longer effective, you owe all that money. You owe minus what you paid each year up to the $274,000 a year, which means if you don't recontract with URTV, that money will go to them. And second, they fulfill their contract. Beyond that, they not only gave us public access through charter, they gave us the internet, international, which means you had no legitimate reason to have fired them. Y'all have been scamming and jamming. So thus saith the Lord, you think it's been hot? We've already had one person die of heat stroke this year. You're going to have a lot more. You think your gas bills have been high? Wait till you pay your electric bill.
Thank you, Brother Christopher. Any other public comment tonight? Yes, sir.
Oh, and I would like a copy of the show to submit to the Attorney General, since the evidence is on this video.
That's enough. Go ahead. We'll be glad. Any information you need, we'll be glad to provide. Yes, sir, Chris.
Chris Oaks, Wanoa. Good evening, Chairman and members of the board. I'm here tonight, believe it or not, to say what a great job you all are doing for the county and making this a great place to live. I trust the judgment you all make, David, K. Ray, Holly, Bill, Carol, and other staff. And thanks for voting a while back to save the landscapes. I also wanted to thank the Sheriff's Department for the great job they do to keep our citizens safe, even the men here. The county staff are a great job keeping the county running as smooth as possible. We have great parks because of the park and rec staff. Our county parks are the most beautiful parks I've been to. And BCTV is my favorite channel. I love the thing it covers and the quality programming it has. As I said before, David, Bill, Holly, K. Ray, and Carol, you have made this a great place to live. Thank you for all you do. I'm proud to say that you are my commissioners and live in Buncombe County. Some of my favorite shows on BCTV is this: the Sheriff's Office, which is about the Buncombe County Sheriff's Office. And I believe that was called County Now, Buncombe County Now, or something like that. Inside the U.S. Army, inside the Air Force, and a lot more which I couldn't write because we'd be all night if I did that. Just thank you for all you do.
It's good to represent you, Chris. Thank you.
So sweet.
All right, any other public comment tonight?
So sweet.
Mr. Yelton.
I'll pull Dr. Baldwin. I'll end on a positive note. There's one thing good about URTV, David. You kept me over there doing my show, and I wasn't here to agitate you, and all these other people wouldn't be here to agitate you. So it might be worth an investment to do that, so you wouldn't have to get angry and run people out of here, because that don't look good on the TV up there. Of course, some people may like it because they don't like the individuals. But you've heard a lot tonight, and I appreciate what the gentleman said about building a relationship of trust with people. And I'm going to give you a suggestion. Of course, anything suggestion I give you, nobody ever does it. You wait 4 or 5 years later and you do it. Thank you, Wanda, for putting new windows in the courthouse. I remember sitting on the 10th floor in the wintertime up there with snow blowing in the bathroom. Got a little cold, too, David. You've been up there, too, I guarantee you, doing legal work. And the snow did. It blew in all the time. I mean, how much money did we waste not doing those windows? But it's very simple. What you do is you go to the internet. You take an Excel spreadsheet, check number, amount of check, to whom the check was written, and the budget line item that check's assigned to. That's all you do. It's simple. You have that information in your county department. And then the people, if they have an interest in URTV, they can look at that budget line item for the year. If they have an interest in education, they can have it in a year. And what then you further do to show leadership is anybody that gets your money, Buncombe County Education Department, AB Tech, if they get a dime of the tax money of the Buncombe County people, they have to make their books the same way. That's what I call open books, not a 990 that a nonprofit fills out. Because if you're ashamed to let people know where your money's going, that sends up a big red flag of distrust. I don't think really you're afraid of it unless something happens after it's left your hand that shouldn't happen, which may happen. Because I got 42 seconds, I'll tell you a story. Washington, D.C. I asked Charles Taylor, Charles, what happened to all that money supposed to come to Western North Carolina for FEMA? You know what he told me? He said, Don, it's like you walk into a room, throw $5,000 up in the air, cut the lights off, and come back and ask who's got the money. And when Charles Taylor left that office, you know what I was thinking? I elect you, Charles, to know where my money's going. And that's what I expect of this board. I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, in-betweener, or up-betweener. I expect you to look after my money the same as I would, and that'll do it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Yelb. More public comment. Let's go with Mike and then Milton. Yeah, yes, sir.
I brought an issue up a while back on against what your all salaries was, and I asked for one more thing in it, and that was people that made over $100,000 to cut their salaries 5%. I've talked to the sheriff quite a few times. The sheriff has been on TV, and he says that he has cut his salary, or it will be cut as of the new budget date. I know there's 6 people sitting up here that make as much or more than he does. And the bad times and the way the salaries got worked around through the 37 hours to the 40-hour thing, we're hurting as a community, and I think it would look good for these people to go ahead and cut their salaries. I know one other person that's in that bracket that has said he would do it with no problem to try to help keep jobs in the county or save one job. So let's be respectful to the workers that work down here that make the lower monies. The upper class, I know they've worked a long time, and they probably deserve what they get. But we've all worked a long time and hopefully deserve what we had. But it's time let's get some respect back in this county. Don't care what they make in Guilford. Don't care what they make in Henderson. I care what they make in Buncombe County. We're buying buildings at $9 million. We're spending $4.5 million moving stuff around across the way. We're redoing courthouses. We got a $25 million jail sitting over here. We've got all these things, and I understand people make a living. But it goes back to the thing, I sat and looked at the city budget. The gentleman give the budget, and the salary out of that $60 million budget was $41 million. You take 3,800 students, that's over $10,000 a student. If a teacher makes $40,000 and there's 20 students in that class, that's $200,000. Where's the salary at? If I got 20 students at $10,000 each, that's $200,000. So, how do you come up $41 million worth of salaries unless there's, just like we got here, a lot of overhead? Because the teachers is not making it. It's the superintendents, it's the lower people, it's the people that's not physically teaching the kids. You have charter schools. They don't get the buildings. They pay for their buildings. The teachers, I know one at Evergreen, he hasn't had a raise in over 3 years, but he loves his kids. Don't know if they get the benefits of being able to retire or not, but we got to look at that.
All right.
I want teachers, but it could be.
Thank you. Dr. Burke? Thank you, Mr. Fryer.
A lot of stress in here tonight from the past history of what's been said. On URTV, I have been a producer of URTV for a TV show. And trying to look at what I've come in to see, I've wanted to be a problem solver, and I've been doing some of my research going back to 1987 when the U.S. Supreme Court created the PEG channel basis in public access and education and government. If you want to do a little bit of research for anyone here, you can go to Wikipedia, put in public access, and you can find a lot of history breaking it down. Bringing it down to the issue of video sales tax, monies that are vested by the taxpayers to create those PEG channels have a precedent for the intended use by law. Looking at that and putting aside subjective emotional content, there is a due process here that needs to be reapplied under the First Amendment Constitution in regards to that freedom of speech, freedom of press, right to gather. there is a due process here of the American spirit that's very essential to be in place for our community locally of public access. I want to see, personally, a solution move forward that reestablishes public access television multimedia resource for the citizens, by the citizens, with the citizens. You also need to recognize that the citizens need to have an interactive voice with you. That's why I wanted to make the recommendation earlier with the budget that you begin on a regular basis having open public forums for interaction with the public, with the people, because they can't see the problems or the methods of solving them that you do as an elected official working within the bureaucracy. It's an impossibility. I know. I've been there, done that, and survived it. And we've all got to survive this, you as well as us. The leadership has got such a challenge ahead of you to communicate with the people, because it's going to take all of us to solve what's coming ahead of us, financially, socially, personally. You look at your school systems with the food issue alone going up. There's flags going off all over the place. The food assistance going up 70%. The job issue, that's, gosh, much as we want to see jobs become available, that's state business. Help the local people. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Byrd. Any other public comment tonight? Yes, ma'am.
I'm more confused right now than I have been coming to all these meetings. I appreciate that you were expressing yourself to us, David. That's the first time I've heard those expressions, and I've been coming almost a year and a half now.
Let me stop right there. Didn't we have a meeting? I was not at this, but is it not true we had a meeting where John Howe came here, explained the position, Mr. Frew explained the position, you explained the position for several hours? That was my understanding. Is that correct? So, you know, we have.
Okay.
We're trying. We're trying to get the word out. But you got to listen to it, and it's out there. It's been the same. It hasn't changed any.
Okay.
But go ahead. Now,
But
give her time.
Maybe
back
in my mind it did, because I didn't really appreciate Mr. Howell because he right away said that our state was throwing us under the bus. And I found out that isn't true. The state didn't throw us under the bus. And I think we're blaming Raleigh for a lot of things, and we're just throwing our state. Our state means as much to me as our county does. So that, you know, approaching it that way really upset me. Then we called our representatives, and they said, no, that's not what's happening. My one question, and what is just eating me alive, is why are we the only county in North Carolina that is doing this to public access? None of the other counties are. So why, if it was true that we don't have to be funded, do all those other counties just like public access that much that they're allowing it? And let's not talk about the money for a minute. Let's talk about the people, because we were touching so many people, so many shut-ins. We were doing such a service as volunteers. We weren't getting anything out of this except helping our community. And I feel like we're being punished for it. We've been beat up. And the other counties are not having that happen. So do they appreciate their people more? I don't know. I'm confused. I don't want to think those things, because I think highly of all of you. You are our representatives. There can't be this big difference between all of us, but something has to change here. I'm having people come up to me on the street saying to me, where is URTV? First it was free speech, which was kind of interesting. They put that on there. And now it's blank, and people are saying, why? How did this happen? And I still can't answer that. And I come to every one of these meetings, and I'm trying so hard. But I still can't answer that question. I don't think that we have communicated during this. Even when we had the public forum, and we were actually on the agenda. You weren't here, unfortunately. I went away from that not knowing anything. So I'm sorry, but when John Hall said the state threw us under the bus, I lost all my respect for that meeting. And I think as a citizen of the state of North Carolina, I think a lot of us felt that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Any other public comment tonight? Yes, sir.
I'm Mark Staley. I live in Asheville, and I was wondering where I have a program here, and I was wondering where where's the public access station so I could submit it.
Continue with public comment. We don't have public access apparently, and if you have a comment, we're glad to hear from Mr. Taylor.
Okay, because it was my impression that you got money for that. I find this strange, odd.
We've given all money that's due any public access. We've complied with the contracts, and we're here to hear your public comment tonight if you have any, sir.
Well, okay, and then, all right, then, you reduced our funding 90%. So because of that, it had to go down. It had to shut down. And you're giving that money to support the PEG channel. You're giving the money to support the PEG channel. You're supposed to give it enough to keep it going, I believe. I mean, that'd be like you're given however much money to give somebody gas for their vehicle, and you have enough to keep it going, but you only give them 1 gallon. And then when they run out of gas, say, sorry, but I guess you're just going to have to find money somewhere else. Or you get a lawnmower to mow a lawn. You only mow like 1/10 of the lawn, and then say, sorry, well, that's what the lawnmower is there for. That's what the gas is there for. It's not there to just throw a couple bucks at us and then say, oh, you went under, too bad. See what I mean? We don't give a defense budget for the country and give them just enough to where they can't pay the soldiers or develop any new technology and say, oh, well, we gave you as much as we're required. It's not working. If it isn't working, then it's not being done right. It seems like kind of like a common sense thing, doesn't it? It's like, I don't know. And in speaking of the John Howe guy, we looked into him. He makes a living by finding money for people, and then he gets a percentage of it. And there's nothing wrong with that. I have no problem with the way a man makes a living. But I'm just saying the whole thing was slanted, and we conclusively crushed everything that he said on that other thing. And I think you have a copy of our budget to where you see we need that much to run. So, and you can easily afford it. And again, I'd like to know, why did you reduce it 90%? And why are you the only county commissioners in the state doing this to their local public access station? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Staley. Any other public comment tonight? Let's see. Mr. Rice, if you have not done public comments, I guess you're up. Yes, sir.
Thank you. On the budget, capital, when the public looks and sees that you're buying buildings, building courthouses, building all kinds of buildings, and buying all kinds of capital year after year after year after year, and the thing that comes to my mind, the big building across the street that you're going to put the offices in, it was said by the county manager when she gave the report that this building had the people in it, the vendors, and that money was going to pay the money that it took to take care of that building. And then the next thing we saw, it was turned completely around, and now county offices all took over and other projects put in it at a cost of renovation. So to me, that speaks pretty poorly of an organization called the government. Now, the other thing I brought you is a concern about mountain mobility and asked you, and Mr. Chairman, you said, Miss Green, would you look into that and bring that back to us next meeting? She said yes. The next thing I got, it wasn't no meeting here, it was a public release public press release and no discussion by the board and dumped it into the private sector. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying we should have had an opportunity to be heard on it and to look into it. I must have had something great on my mind, you know. If the county manager was great enough to do this, I respect her for listening to me. Now, the other thing, poverty. We have heard that. We've seen that. We've got the evidence of that in social service, school systems, AB Tech, and every aspect. This is what I'm going to ask you to do, to form a committee, not just a handful of committee, but a task force in Buncombe County to look in to the issue on poverty at every angle, every respect, in every corner of this county, and have the city combined with it, and let's look at the real issue, because if it is bad as what all the government people are saying and all the other people are saying, why have they not been a task force put together and say, let's look at this specific issue, because dropout rate's going to go back up. Social service is going to even look worse than what it is now, and it's bad. And everything that we can think about is going to even be worse if we do not get a handle on this thing. So poverty, I mean, this sounds awful bad. It's not just sound bad. We've got evidence by professionals that told you that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Any other public comment tonight?
Second.
Motion and second. I did promise this lady I would give her a response, and I want to do that. The new proposal, there's not a format, Madam Clerk. We're trying to figure something out. I think how would you recommend this proceed? A request for proposal.
Yes, and they'll ask us to be a party to. They have all the equipment, so they're going to be part of what will happen in the future.
Okay, so the city owns the equipment, has the equipment now. They're really in control at this point. They're going to put a proposal, request for proposal out to see if anybody has interest in working some way. And that's when you need to get involved and say, yes, I would like this. This is so important. I want to continue it. Here's how I will make it happen.
Online? Is the proposal going to be submitted online?
I don't know. Yeah, the city is handling that, though, because they have the assets. Lauren Bradley would be the one with the city. Okay, and last thing I just want to, the Wyoming Buncombe County, I don't know how many people have public access. We have complied with what we understand the law requires. And we've asked, if you've got a better idea, come and tell us about it. Or if you got another way to keep going, do it. And we've had contacts. Well, I've had many discussions with you. I'm glad to have more. But, we've done what we can do. Someone needs to step forward, and maybe you can do something, maybe you can't. But it's going to be with the city of Asheville. And because of the contracts, we're going to be involved in it. But the city of Asheville owns the assets now. They have taken them. They have them. And that's what you're going to be using if anything should come about. I don't know if it can or not. But that's the only way I can see it would proceed. Okay? All right. And there's been a motion and second to go in closed session. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Closed session.
Yeah.
I drank 2 bottles of water.
I'm surprised I'm able